Damn it. Welcome back to the Dynasty Grind. My name is Peter Howard at PA Howdy on Twitter. Tonight I am joined by what's his name? Zach Reed from the Dynasty Dummies podcast. We go live every Wednesday night at 9:30 to talk about Dynasty or fantasy football in general. For any questions, comments, or thoughts you may have, drop them in the comment box or whatever streaming platform you happen to be listening to us. Maybe, possibly. And we'll be happy to chat. I don't know what's going on right now. It's preseason, and yet it seems to be the quietest news segment of all. But feel free to remind us of what we're forgetting. It is post-Expo season. That's the best I came up with for the title. And Zach is fresh from the Expo, so he's our source for, whatever happened there. Let's get to it. Hey, Zach, what's going on?
Hey, fresh may be a stretch. I am not fresh. I am back from the Expo. I'm not fresh.
Fair enough. I have never been fresh, so I don't know what that's like. I just took a guess that that's what fresh looked like. No, I do know there was some news. Like, didn't Dalvin Cook sign somewhere?
Yeah, Dalvin Cook signed with the Jets. Zeke signed with the Patriots, just like we all thought he would. We actually talked about that last week at this time.
I actually think it's interesting. There's been something of a buzzy veteran running back market this offseason, and I felt like it's a bad year to go hunting for him. So I'm really interested to see how that shakes out this year. Let's see. The Big Ham says, "Evening, mate. Welcome in. Thanks, man. Appreciate you. Pigskin Panic is here with plenty of positive signs. Dave Toronto is here, as always, with some love. Or Toronto Dave, rather. Sorry, Dave. Welcome back. Any worries for Burks? Injury prone? Not a thing, and also no. Would you be looking to move off him? Not trying to be reactionary. I hadn't heard any Burks news. I guess there might be.
Yeah, today I think he strained his MCL on a catch downfield. They're saying a couple of weeks rest and he'll be fine. So no, like it's Peter, it's just exactly like what you said. It's not injury prone is not a thing. And yes, like Burks has maybe a litany is not quite exactly the right word, but he has several injuries. I mean, he's broken a hand, he's torn an ACL, he's sprained his knee before, he's had a right ankle injury and a chest sprain, like in college, and then got nicked up last year too. But again, it's the nature of the game is physical. I mean, it's a contact sport, and you're going to get banged up, and a knee sprain, if that is what it ends up being, and that's right now the news that I'm getting. So we'll it's kind of a wait and see, but a knee sprain is not going to take us, or at least take me, off Treylon Burks.
No. In general, look, I might be wrong on him, but I'm stubbornly enough not convinced yet that he is as bad as his rookie season finished. Which, there's a very small percentage of players I'm willing to go in on that with. Talent wins out is my overall philosophy. So either I'm right or wrong on Burks. When he is healthy, he'll be good or he'll be bad. And that'll be defined by earning volume in my world. So no. Typically, I operate on a buy-injured basis where if there's a small market of people being more concerned on a player for a reason that I know eventually clears up, whether it's an injury or whether it's some sort of hype bubble, or we talk about micro markets in terms of veterans being less interesting in the early part of the offseason because everyone wants the shiny things. Right now, Cooper Kupp's value is escalating again, finally, but there are still some that fit into that category because they haven't done much lately. Deebo Samuel might be one, Mike Evans might be one, Chris Godwin might be one. And whenever anyone enters into one of those windows, I'm more of a buying frame of mind. Treylon Burks is a very particular kind. If there is a discount because of injury, he's also yet to prove himself. So I'm interested, but I'm less likely to say outright buy. So far, his ADP this offseason has been good. It's good enough that I haven't been buying him in every league. It's not good enough that I think he is a sell or a hold. I'd be more interested in acquiring him. But yeah, I'd roughly try and walk that tightrope, but appreciate the question. Sweet shirt, Peter. Thank you very much. It's Dogs Love Football. That's, I think, what it stands for. Something like that. Appreciate that. Thanks, guys. No problem.
Yeah, LCL. I just found that LCL. But again, the timeline's pretty similar. And honestly, not necessarily structural, which is nice. I've actually done an LCL. Not that I'm a high level athlete like Treylon Burks, but
right.
I
tell you what, I do have a question. I've been trying to make some videos in a series basically about how to make the decision of what decisions or what trades or what things you should be doing on a dynasty league for a dynasty roster. And my next one is how to make a plan. Basically, I've separated that out, like how to decide which direction your team should be going, what type of moves should you be looking for. Do you have any input on that? What do you do to try and decide what to do about a team? Like so far, I've just got it broke down by assess the value of a team. And I've got a whole video on how to assess a team. Just broken down into like high level stuff. Well, not high level makes it sound smart, but like broad scope, not do you have Treylon Burks, but what's your draft capital situation? Put that in one box or another. What do your roster cloggers look like? Are they veterans that might be more likely to score points, or are they could-be's that are more likely to be nothing? Does that fit the roster construction? And so that's the third section. And so for making a plan, that's all step one. And step two, it's identify things on your roster that you think other players will like. Not necessarily that you want and you want to keep, but what things on your roster other teams would be interested in outside of draft capital. So I have JJ Zachary as Justin Jefferson, but I also have Gabe Davis, who some people might be interested in, but not everyone. But identify what you have to sell eventually. And then like evaluate other teams in your league.
Yeah.
Who are the competitives, who are not competitive, what are they interested in? That's as far as I've got. I don't know their three identical steps, but I think those are three. That's what I've got for how to make a plan for your dynasty team so far.
Absolutely. And Peter, immediately when you started talking about that, my mind went to your third one, which is in order to be able to evaluate your team, you have to evaluate the other teams in your league, because you're evaluating your team against the other teams in your league, because right. you may have a really good roster, like a really good paper roster, but then you may look at your team. I mean, we've been doing the rate my league stuff, and like there are a couple leagues where even if you had a pretty good team, the top three teams in the league were going to blow you out of the water. And so having a middle tier team isn't going to do you much good. And
that's the thing, though. Like, I think roughly 15% of teams should consider themselves competitive. Like they should be moving in that direction. And 15% should be, oh, I'm rebuilding. But the vast majority of us are at least middle ground in terms of a plan. And there's this generic try to increase value in general thing. And so I was trying to, like, how do you approach those teams? Like most of the time, and that's one of my big threads throughout the 3 videos I'm making so far, it's like most of the time, 95% of good ideas are going to result in no movement. Those moves aren't available in your league. The player isn't interested in trading Rondell Moore. They like Drake London too, and so they're just going to wait and hold and see.
Right.
But you could at least know what moves you should try and make, and then if you strike out, try again another time. But that's as far as I've got into it. I can't think of any other sections yet.
And I also think that you got to understand there are periods of time when making moves is going to be easier, and periods of time like, during the off season when there's nothing happening, that it's going to be a lot more difficult to get a deal done, because not everybody is a complete degenerate and thinking about fantasy football for 365 days a year. And so there are going to be times when in most leagues, it's going to be really difficult to grab somebody by the nose and lead them over to a trade, because they're not necessarily thinking about it. Now, this is a great time of year because all of a sudden it's back in the forefront, it's back in the consciousness. You just had the Hall of Fame induction, the Hall of Fame game. Now we're into preseason. You're seeing clips from training camp. You've got Hard Knocks on now. So there's a whole lot more buzz. And so you're able to move some of these darlings who be your darling for for prices. So it's again identifying where you are relative to your league, what's on your roster that may be appealing to other teams, and then figuring out the best period of time to be able to do that. At least for me. So there's a lot to it, but I really like that. I really like that idea, and I like that set of that series that you're talking about. I think that's a really brilliant
I thought it was a good idea. I don't know I have the right answers, but like the trade one, like I'm just tired of videos that tell me go trade for this player. I'm like, that's not gonna work in my league. And also the trades you see on Twitter where, if the answer is do an easily good trade, then do an easily good trade. But I think we can be better. Like, what type of trades do I? And my first one was to tier up. I'm looking at my roster. I'm seeing it. Do I have a good thing that I can add to go get a player in a higher tier? And so that's the first thing. One of the first trades I look for in my league. I have, T. Higgins. That's nice. Can I get Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase? Do I have those horses to go get one of those players? Is there a type of trade that you think you always target? Because like one I came across on Twitter that I can't say I'm an advocate for, but it made sense. It's similar to a tier up trade. Like Cooper Adams was saying, he always goes and sends Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase to try and get one of those elite QBs. So I'm like, I don't like that to be a generic thing, but I don't mind the idea, right? That's one way to get rid of there is no up in terms of their value. So what do? It's positional value, right? The top quarterbacks are worth more than top wide receivers. And so that might be a way of trying to do it. But I'm looking for ideas. But yeah, some people said some things. Drew, hello, fellas. Patrick Mahomes or Anthony Richardson and 224 first. Well, that would be an example of tearing up. I'd rather have Mahomes. Yeah. You got a shiny thing right now and 2 first. And that's the thing. I want them to be fair trades. It's not like you send these to people and you get one over on them. This is a fairly decent trade for a team that's more interested in value upside. If Anthony Richardson is anyway decent and 2 first, they found a good trade for Mahomes. So it's a fairly interesting trade for them too. And generically, 9 times out of 10, I can't imagine myself taking the other side of it, but I think it's a fair trade. It's a Mahomes side for me. Yeah. And Zach too.
Yeah, I think so. It just seems like with Richardson, there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of hype, but there's a lot of risk baked into that profile because you're assuming that he can make a leap at a level he's never played before, at the highest level he's ever played at, and do something throwing the ball that he's never done before. And so
like if you're on a
no, it's just you might as well have the guy who is a perennial number 1 quarterback.
What would you do if you're a pure rebuild? Patrick Mahomes is the only thing you had in a competitive league. Is that a type of trade you would consider, though? Maybe not Richardson. Maybe you'd try for another QB, but that level of... Or what would you try and do in that circumstance?
So I think what I try to do with that one is I wouldn't mind making something like this and then turn around and trade Richardson to try to acquire another player and more picks and just kind of continue to kick it down the road that way, because I would rather have. I mean, there are several quarterbacks I think that are either in the same tier as Richardson or maybe not getting the hype that Richardson is, but are acquirable with Richardson maybe plus. He's right in that Tua Kyler. Tua Kyler, Dak, Fields, Young, Stroud. Like he's right in that range with all of those really good quarterbacks. Even Daniel Jones and Cousins, although I think that's quite a step down. But that to me is what I would do, is try to get one of those with another pick, and then all of a sudden you got Mahomes plus a quarterback plus 3 picks. Yeah, I mean you gave up Mahomes, but you got a quarterback plus 3 picks. And
then you try and trade that quarterback. Yeah. That's what I mean. I think
I love the fungibility of the picks, and I feel like that's been like my word of the month is fungibility. But being able to have picks that can be but they're flexible. They can be traded to anybody, as opposed to if you have Richardson, there may be 3 or 4 teams in your league that are interested in Richardson. There may be like 4 or 5 teams that don't have that risk tolerance, so they're not really into it. And then a couple other teams may not be at a point where Richardson helps them. But if you have picks, all of a sudden everybody wants those. I mean, everybody always wants picks. That's kind of the nature of it.
All right. Mike asks 12-team 1 QB start 8. Give ETN in London, get Lamb.
Yes.
That's kind of a tier-up trade as well. Yeah. And again, I would say the same answer. Like Lamb in 90% of cases or 70% of cases, in most leagues, it's Lamb. But in a strong rebuilding team, I think ETN in London is interesting. Even though technically that's a competitive side because you're getting a running back, we're entering a period right now where that running back's going to get increasingly interesting to other teams. And you can just keep London and hope he pays off as well. So, yeah, 70% of the time it's Lamb, but I think it's a fair trade. Okay, man, good stuff. The ebb and flow. There you go.
Timing about, yeah, it's all, I mean, and that's Pigskin. That's part of the micro market thing that I talk about. Is you can almost see this happening, and not only do we have this long-term cycle of pick value and then pick value, ebbing and then coming back, but you also have within that windows where you can see individual players have value spikes and declines, and you can oftentimes see those coming too. And so if you are paying attention to kind of the biorhythm of fantasy football, you can make some hay.
Absolutely. 12-team Superflex full PPR, extra half point for tight ends. Running into the season with this team: Watson, London, Watson, Lamar, Ritter, Pollard, Mixon, Madison, Metcalf, Allen. Allen or wide receiver? Why am I blanking on that?
Keenan,
okay. Hollywood, Jahan Dotson, Drake London, and Andrews. Yeah, I think you're a fairly competitive team, but you're still in that 70%. So personally, I'm personally interested in selling Tony Pollard. Metcalf's a really interesting wide receiver to target right now, but you already have him. Allen's a little old. Hollywood's fantastic. I'm interested still in staying in that 70% range and moving forward, but you're a playoff-bound team, clearly. It's a pretty good roster. So, yeah, I think the question here, that Mr. Cobb, is can you compete? And I think you're competitive. I don't think there's any drastic reason to go to one of those 15% extremes. Therefore, you're in that 70% range. You're looking to increase one value or the other in a fair manner. Your running backs are really good. Honestly, if this was a redraft team, you got 3 running backs with top 12 projected volume for this season, and your wide receivers are really good through the top 3 for this season. And then you've got some interesting depth from a dynasty perspective with London. Andrews obviously is one of those tight ends. And Watson and Lamar are clearly top 12 quarterbacks, if not better, in an individual season. So I think you're competitive, but you don't have that clear positional advantage at any 1 or 2 positions outside of Andrews, maybe. Well, yes. So competitive, not top 3, as it were, for most leagues, Preach. I'm trying, preaching the good dynasty word. Yeah, sell Fields personally, but whatever. Unless you can't. Superflex 10-team PPR start 11. What to add on to Waller or Higgins for Drake London? You see, London technically I think is less than Higgins right now. That's your league thing, though. If that's not the way he trades, Higgins is probably not going to be a good trade for London in this league. I get the feeling, because someone asked me about his target share the other day, because they were questioning some of the numbers they heard on Player Profile. I think they've done a big piece on Drake London recently, which means that in a lot of leagues, you're not going to find the Drake London being valued by ADP, and that's worth knowing. Drake London, I put in the Traylon Burks bucket. I'm really interested in both, but the ADP was decent enough. I didn't think I was going to find a lot of advantage trying to trade for them because I thought they were fairly well valued in most leagues, and therefore in my leagues, the valuation was going to be pretty sharp. This is going to be a rough year for London as well. He's going to score points. He's going to be good, I think, and remind us that he is one of those good sophomore wide receivers, but he's having a career year this year is going to be difficult in that situation. I think Zach's spoken about this before, so I'm going to just throw it over to him, where he would favor Pitts being the blanket for this year of hopefully okay, but not a career year for the team overall.
I mean, it looks like a team that wanted to run the ball last year, drafted a running back top 8 this year. They have a young-ish quarterback who I don't think was ever expected to light the world on fire. And so you're not probably going to have multiple players get enough volume to be what everybody is hoping they're going to be. And so, I mean, Pitts and Drake London and whatever Bijan Robinson gets through the air. I mean, that's all. It's just it's not a very big pie. And if you're taking a decent sized piece out of not a very big pie, it's still not a very big piece. And so it's hard for me to be really, really excited about getting in on that type of player. And Higgins is the opposite. Higgins is, and we go back to this whenever we talk about something like this, but this is 4 teams a year have 2 top 24 wide receivers, and Higgins is probably one of them. Burrow can easily sustain enough volume to do that. Chase and Higgins are both talented enough to draw targets, and so to me, Higgins.
I think London is too, as well. To your point, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. This is where it's about the value. Like, you add a first to Waller, it's a good trade for London. But if you're adding anything to Higgins,
I'd rather have Higgins straight
Higgins
up.
Exactly. So Higgins is what you hope Drake London can be. So you'd rather, exactly. So if you think about it that way, and if that's the thing, most offers aren't available in most leagues. That's what was frustrating me with trying to make a target video, because so many of the ones I found were like, go do this player for the. I'm like, but then it's not available in your league, and you're left either throwing way too much to get London, and then when you get upset, if say it didn't work out. And next year, it'll be like, why did that analyst lead me astray? They didn't, because they tell you, well, I didn't tell you to trade Higgins for London. I said trade in at his VAT. And so you get stuck in this situation where you want to go do the thing that you've been told is good, but the only way to do it in your league is to trade something that's too high almost. Right. Now, if London beats our expectations this year, it'd feel great. But again, there's just smaller odds of that happening. But yeah, add a first, add 2 to Waller, and I would take Drake London in that 70% block of most dynasty teams. But, depending on your roster construction, if you're more towards the competitive side, Waller might be better just holding. But yeah, a first or 2 onto Waller to get London seems fair to me. Higgins, I think Zach's absolutely right. I'd rather have Higgins than London. I traded away the 107, Dillon, and Ritter to get Jacobs, Cooks, and the 301. Josh Jacobs, I'm assuming. And Brandon Cooks. All right. So the 107, depending on what league format, it could have been Addison. That's my only question here. If it wasn't Addison or Quentin Johnson, then I feel pretty good about this trade. Jacobs is probably the star of it.
It's got to be one of them. If it's a super flex, it's got to be one of them. I don't know if it is a super flex, but
it might be James Cooks, in which case I like it a lot less.
Well, James is a singular Cook.
That's true. I forget which one's singular and which one's plural. I'm not saying. I think Jacobs is a star of it, especially for a more competitive team. The 107 was a decent pick in a super flex, though. So I think it's fairly well balanced, and it's based on your team roster. Personally, if I'm in that 70%, I probably would have taken the pick, because that's why I take my risk. But, I mean, I don't think you're crazy.
To me, it very much depends on if it's Superflex. If it's Superflex, then I would prefer the 107 and Ritter.
I think that's fair.
And if it's a single quarterback league, then it's pretty easily Jacobs, Cooks, and the 301. For me, anyway.
Yeah, I like that. Mike, what's the gap between London and JSN? JSN should be a little lower, but I don't think you're going to find much valuation different. Like most, I mean, he's a rookie. People will if it's after your rookie draft, I've been thinking about this a lot as well. People are mostly like, I just made this pick. I'm going to see, like, I picked him for a reason. I'm going to see what plays out. They might be more excited about JSN than anything else on their roster right now. So it's really difficult to trade for rookies unless you're paying too much. I think the trade value is about even. I'd probably rather have JSN just because there's more potential for his value to move up. He only has to have a half decent year, whereas London has to do very, very well in what we know is kind of a kind of a situation, you know?
All of that Peter said, except for I think JSN is a better player than London, and so I want him on my roster, not just because I think he increases in value, but also because I think he is the better player, the better point scoring asset.
Yeah, if this was a rookie rank and they're in the same year, I'd be like, yeah, Jason, that's fair.
And so
I do weight having a positive rookie year. Like players are more unknowns to me, Zach. Again, it's a product of you watching and having a more of a strong opinion on their ability. I normally just defer to that, to be fair, because I want JSN to be better. So
no,
I'm good with it.
I don't have much for qualms about putting JSN ahead of London. Even though London did have a fairly good rookie campaign, like I don't think they are in the same echelon. I really don't. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be, in 2 years we're going to look back at this and go, really?
That's it. London is valued as a CD in my league. Yeah, there's a really... This is what people mean by the depth of wide receiver, because there are so many, because everyone's got a different... So many in that second tier, it's almost pretty much anyone that has value is valued in the CD Lamb. But yeah, and this is where, again, I go to proven and young. That's CD Lamb. London, I think, his rookie year was pretty solid, but he hasn't had his top 12 season yet. CD Lamb did last year. I'm a little lower on CD Lamb because I have him literally as wide receiver 12, just because I prefer so many others in that tier because they were earlier breakouts, and that's the only reason in their NFL career. But yeah, I'd still prefer him over the more questionable proven, if you know what I mean. God, I feel like I'm getting lost in a word salad here. But yeah, CD Lamb over London, which tells you something about your league. For a start, like one, if you want a good young wide receiver, you better get them in your rookie draft, because clearly they're going to value them if they do anything positive in their rookie season and if the hype machine gets going in the offseason. And two, CD Lamb or those types might be someone that you'd rather target in that league. That would probably be my takeaway. Jalen Waddle, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Who else? DK Metcalf. He's a falling value in that category. James Tucker, hearing the running back Eagle committee hype and Gainwell about to take the running back one. I believe that will okay. Did you look better than Scott and Sanders last year, but could beat out Swift and Penny? Would you trade a late 24 second? A late 24 second is fine for a running back, to be honest with you, in general, and you think they're in line with some level of volume. I don't think Gainwell would be on my list of players I'd want to do that for, considering you can try and get Aaron Jones for a second right now, or Swift for that matter. I'd rather both over Gainwell. Gainwell's always been easy to hype. He's struggled to be that guy in any committee he's found himself in, even to eke out like a Madison level role. He hasn't done that yet. I think he's fine, but yeah, I think there are better targets for your second. Again, this is where I get most Dynasty advice will say, yes, I go for a running back who could get opportunity. I think that would be fine and you can hype it up. But we forget there is so much value to do so much with, and there are so many better trades you could get done using that second, I think, than getting Gainwell. And also, yeah, I don't think he's a running. I would put him third on that list personally. Does that sound right, Zach?
Yeah, I don't think he is as good a runner as either Swift or Penny. He's probably he may be the best pass catcher on that team, which is saying something, because I think Swift is a very good pass catcher. But
oh wow, I didn't even think about him that way. That's good enough. Sorry, Gainwell.
Gainwell was a fantastic pass catcher. That was one of my favorite things about his game, was his ability to not only catch the little swing passes that everybody can do, but he can also run like a wheel route and get outside, or be lined up on the outside and beat a defender that way. So like Gainwell is pretty versatile. But I think the key there, James, is the Eagles committee. And other than last year when there were a whole bunch of injuries, it has been a committee. And we've been frustrated by the fact that it is a committee, except for, it's a commission. It's going to be very similar to the Patriots this year, where people are going to be frustrated because they most likely will go back to the committee approach, which is what they've been trying to do for the last 10 years, or basically since maybe longer now. I'm old, since when Corey Dillon was in New England. So
right. Yeah, that surprised me. I would have thought Swift, where I just mostly look at volume, but there you go. Higgins equals Devontae Smith. I think similar tier. Again, dealer's choice, which you would prefer. To be honest, it's whichever I get a bad deal on.
Yep.
The big ham. Again, sorry. Interesting. I like that thinking. Just don't have a bona fide wide receiver one, and I have Higgins, McLaurin, JSN, Burks. No, I get that. And where you're trying to get more competitive, and I don't mind trading Burks or JSN away, but you're going much higher tier. If you're adding to either, you add to either and go up. The tier up offer is always there. You could also add to Higgins, try to get into that JJ Chase category. As far as wide receivers that I think you're going to get better deals on, I can't remember what your roster looked like. DK Metcalf is in that category for me. I think he's the one in that tier. But I think Higgins, for Dynasty, he's borderline wide receiver one territory. McLaurin's value isn't there. But I think maybe adding a first to Burks or Higgins and trying to go up if you want a better wide receiver might be your best path forward.
To me, the Higgins McLaurin is not a bad 1-2 punch, and I think you end up getting a wide receiver one and a wide receiver two out of that combination, even if they're not what you consider a bona fide one.
And we do think JSN is going to be one of those guys as well. Yeah. So it's a wait and see approach, which sucks. Again, most Dynasty moves is nothing. So yeah. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to stomp on you again there, Zach. Or interrupt you there again. What was I going to say there? I forgot. Yeah, I forgot. There you go. Can't think. Puff pass kick. Zach is a negative Nancy about certain players. He's always like, blah, blah, blah. I only like players that score points. I only like Travis Kelce. No other tight ends. Where is the struggle in that, Zach? Yeah, I know. Zach refuses to make Dynasty difficult for himself. I don't want to tell you.
That's not true, though, Puff Pass Kick. I love some players who haven't scored points. JSN, Addison, Bijan, none of them have scored any points.
Or the rookies. I really like the rookies that I like.
We're in on that.
I got a couple. I'm willing to take some more pain on Bateman and Rondell Moore. I tell you what, I was having this conversation in my Discord a little bit. Jalen Talbot, he's a mistake everyone shouldn't make, but he's a Sky Moore mistake. Like David Bell and Jalen Talbot both have better rookie profiles, in my opinion. They're trading. I found them on a waiver wire in a couple of leagues, which I think rate on the, what an average league looks like. So he could be waiver wireable. If you're going to make one of those bets, if your roster construct, that's what put the whole series in my head. If your roster construction is built to take below average shots, like there's 27% shots, this wide receiver might be better on his rookie season. Don't take the Sky Moore shot. Take the Talbot, take the David Bell. I mean, they're just as unlikely, but those seem better to me. Outside of Justin Ross, obviously. But sorry, how did I get onto that? Yeah, players that haven't scored points. That's all. All running backs. I don't care if a running back's ever scored points. If he's in line for potential volume, I'm like, oh, cool, that's roster worthy. Happy Wednesday, gentlemen. Getting excited for the season. Dynasty leagues getting even more active. It is a fun part of the season. Mine recently got more active and then died because everyone in them went to the Expo, and so they stopped doing things. But I did see a couple moves today. Superflex, cool. Last year's champ.
So I in a Superflex, I still prefer the 107 and Ritter, because you get a starting quarterback, you get ostensibly potentially Addison. At the very worst, you're getting Quentin Johnston or Zay Flowers, which either one of those guys I'm fairly excited about. Like Jacobs is good, like a very good running back. There are questions about whether or not things are going to be pretty in Las Vegas in terms of whether or not he holds out, whether or not they and so that's tough. And yes, he had an amazing year last year, but it's the first time he has been used that way.
Probably agree.
Yeah, it's just, and I get get adding Jacobs to a team that was a champion last year because you're bolstering your team, but I also want to continue my run, and I think having either Addison, Quentin Johnston, or Flowers puts me in a better position to continue my run than having a 26-year-old running back. Even though he's at the top of his game, you're probably not going to be able to trade him.
John Bosch, FF, apparently, because
is it yours or mine?
I'm pretty sure it's yours. He's definitely not talking about a random DLF shirt. He's talking about a Scott Fishel shirt. Also, John, one of the few people that's still in my Twitch Discord, in my Twitch platform. So I appreciate you, John. Thank you. We have fun time over there. People should join Twitch. Kenneth Gainwell is a great compliment player, but that's about it as far as it goes.
Yeah,
which is okay if you know what you're getting. But I think there are better. I think honestly, there's more upside for a second at running back right now. But whatever. No consistency whatsoever. Yep.
Consistency is overrated.
I've never been consistent personally. Joss, people just use a second and early third on Gainwell. Hard to ask for anything less than a second. Yeah.
I mean, that's sunk cost fallacy. Like, that's fine. You can hang on to him if you're going to make me pay up.
I'm gonna go get.
I can go find the other guy who's Kenny Gainwell. Yeah, and like there are
a lot of those guys. There are a lot of them.
Yeah.
Rambo, thoughts on stacking and triple stacking? I already have Herbert and Mike Williams. Have inbox for offer for Keenan Allen at reasonable cost. Keenan Allen's just a good target in general, like roster the has-beens, because they haven't been finished being it, but. Stacking in general, his too long didn't read take. It doesn't matter in Dynasty where you're making weekly start decisions at all, really much, although it is a nice thing to help focus you and start building your roster construction the way you want. Good teams often have a lot of good players, and so that's not necessarily a bad target. I believe the correlation between most stacks is between 2 and 3%. So again, it does add an edge that is almost undeniably valuable in something like a best ball GPP tournament. But in Dynasty, even in a best ball Dynasty, it's not getting you that big of an edge. It's like rostering someone else's running back handcuff. Like, yes, you should prioritize it, but you shouldn't build your team around the prospect of only having other people's handcuffs. If you end up with your own handcuff, it's not the worst thing in the world in Dynasty. And that's kind of the category I put it in. By all means, go for it. If it comes at a reasonable cost, you're getting good players. I don't mind that they're on the same team. And there's potential you get some level of stacking in certain weeks. But I wouldn't build my Dynasty roster around the principle, even if it's a best ball Dynasty. Zach, I know you've ended up talking about this a lot. I heard you on the TradeX podcast talking about this, I think.
No, and I agree with you. I'm not going to go out of my way to make a stack, but acquiring Keenan Allen at a reasonable cost is a move I would make regardless of the stack. And so, like that's, I'm not worried about rostering. I want to roster good players. Puff Pass Kick says I want to roster players who score points. Keenan Allen is a player who scores points, so maybe he's not wrong. Like that's the avenue that I would pursue, regardless of the stack.
James Tucker, draft now Friday for a Dynasty. I like the fact he gave the day because he knows it might be Friday by the time we get there. It's like I better date this. For a Dynasty startup, or wait for weekend before week one kickoff. Oh, so when's the best time to do a Dynasty startup? Someone brought up why don't we wait in case, but everyone else wants to rev up the draft. One thing I would say is never try and be in a hurry. I know it's really difficult because we get excited, but honestly, the minute it's over, you just end up thinking, wow, I wish we could start that again. And it's always good to keep that in mind. I do like some innovative ideas I've heard on different levels of clock timers to stop the waiting around boredom. Like I like the idea of a chess clock timer where you have a certain number of hours, you can spend it however you want. But no matter how you have it set up, however much time anyone gets on the clock, that's their time. They can literally use all of it. It's not being a worse league member or not being as involved. People have lives and schedules, and sometimes it's just that's the way they like to play. They like to draw it out. They like to think about it while they're on the clock. It's fine, although it is also fair to have fun being frustrated as long as you're doing it in a fun manner with your league mate. But I would say I don't want to draft a startup after a league's gone on. Honestly, what I find mostly is no matter when you time it for to gain an advantage or the best opportunity, the whole rest of the league is full of other dynasty managers trying to do the same thing. So I find we mostly catch up with ourselves. Earlier is better. There's more potential edge when there's less known. Later, the better, the more everyone's on an equal playing field. But mostly, I don't think it matters. It's just what you prefer. I would rather do it now and try to stretch it out until the season starts so I have something to do. But that's me.
The question, so someone brought up, why don't we wait in case it's Dynasty. So like in
you have to have that like build it.
Yeah, like you're it's going to be multiple years. It's going to be, I mean, and guys get injured all the time, and yeah, maybe you avoid one injury, but what happens if somebody gets injured in week 2? Are we going to wait until week 3 to start the draft? And like how? So I don't think there's a bad time to do a dynasty startup. I really don't. Like I've done them immediately after the NFL season closes. I've done them after the NFL draft. I've done them in July. I've done them in August. Like, I don't think there's a bad time to do a draft. I don't think that that's a great reason to wait. But if everybody wants to wait, I don't think that's a bad thing either. But like Peter said, like, get in there and enjoy it when it happens. Like that's I always kind of laugh because a lot of times you'll be in leagues and people are really anxious to get picks made. And it's like, we just talked about how much we wanted to do a dynasty draft. We wanted to do a startup. We've been talking about this. And now on the clock, you're trying to get it done as fast as possible. So then we can go back to not having a startup, not having a draft going on. Like, but yeah, let's enjoy it a little bit.
I also, just to that particular point, how far do you want to go with that? It feels like a quicksand because, why not wait till week 2? Because then you'll know even more. I tell you what, why don't we do the startup after the season? Because there's always more time in front where that question continues to remain. Part of a good process of doing well in Dynasty or drafting well or being lucky in Dynasty, whatever it is trying to account for the amount that you don't know. And hopefully, no matter when the draft happens, you just have to adjust that process to how much is risky and more immediately. But yeah, like at a certain point, you're like, why don't we just never do the startup? Because then why don't we wait for the NFL to be over and then draft? Because then we'll know. And they're like, I don't, at a certain point it gets ridiculous. The Big Ham gave us $1.99. We don't know where that goes, but we really appreciate it. We don't prioritize them, though, not because we don't appreciate it, but because otherwise I'd get lost, honestly. I'd forget which comment goes where. Great responses, guys. Really appreciate it. Appreciate you, man. Thanks
appreciate you, yeah.
Zach, you freaking rock. This is a true comment. I like this one. Mike, 12-team 1 QB start 8. Give London, get Deontay Johnson and 24 first. I mean, again, it's fairly balanced. 70% of the time of leagues, I'd rather the London side. But Deontay Johnson is going to be good again, and the first is that fungible. I can use value. So I think it's pretty good. Either side. Personally, I'll take my risk on those young players entering those pivotal moments if I think they can what's the word? Take advantage of it. And I don't think he's JSN. I will take Zach's word on that, but I think it's good. I think it's pretty good. And so I think good will do good things, and that will continue to maintain his value, and he's a little younger and more exciting to other people. So I think it's fair. James Tucker, the third-string quarterback for the Patriots against the third-string defenders, but he looks special. I mean, just think of that sentence through. In a dead zone of Mac Jones and Zappy, is he worth something in Superflex? Bill looked like he saw gold. Bailey Zappy is someone that Zach highlighted like really early in the offseason, and I started adding to all my rosters just for that reason. But I do remember thinking his rookie profile from college actually looked pretty decent relative to the class. And so that backed it up, which is kind of why I went out and added him as many places as I could. Yeah, he's definitely in a super flex. Bailey Zappi should not just be rostered. He should be someone that you'd be more excited to add to your depth than most because, we can't predict really quarterbacks as well. But yeah, I'd put Bailey Zappi in and above the Gardner Minshew type tier of really good, solid. They could definitely get some work at some point. Backup quarterbacks, yeah.
Well, and I think James is talking about Malik Cunningham, who
Oh, sorry, did
is
I miss something?
yeah. Well, so Malik Cunningham came in and played pretty well. He's been moved all around in training camp. Like they've had him playing wide receiver. He is really athletic. Out of Louisville, a couple of years ago, ran for over 1,000 yards. Has been over a 62%. I have to look that up. Hold on.
Does that add more
Oh,
fuel to the? Sorry, Zach. I thought you were going to be looking something up.
I was. He's over 62% completion for his career. Like he's an interesting player, but it's really hard to be interesting as a third string quarterback.
Yeah, you should roster him, but let's not send seconds for him, kind of a deal.
If it's a deep, super flex league, then yeah, whatever.
If Clayton Tune is rosterable, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. No, I don't mind that takeover. I personally don't know anything about him. I haven't looked at his rookie profile. Didn't see that highlight. So, but yeah. Carl's Tinty to flex Dak or a 24 first and a 24 second. Is he still a top 15 quarterback? Yeah. He is a top
12.
Sorry, let me just suck this one up. I am higher than him than DLF ranks and DLF ADP and ADP in general. So, you're getting a biased source here. But I think Dak Prescott's got that top 5 upside still. He's done it twice. He's in that Trevor Lawrence tier. He's a top 12 quarterback in Dynasty, to be clear, to answer the questions. Yes, he's easily top 12. He's got multiple years left very easily. And he's one of those players that's got proven upside. And that's kind of why I like him in that tier. Like, if you'll give me something on top of Dak to get Trevor Lawrence, I'm interested in that. And vice versa, to be fair. I think Dak's along the way right now. And heading into the season, he could easily remind everyone of that fact. Top 15 is ludicrously low to me. So, yeah, I would love this trade. A first and a second for Dak. I would take the Dak side every time in a super flex. The freak. Okay.
No. Yeah.
Is it a good idea to buy the injured point scorers at a discount on a rebuilding team? It can be. It's about the trade at a certain point, and it's about, again, what value you have on your roster. But yeah, I've bought Kyler Murray on teams where I'm purely building because, I think that upside justifies the risk on a building team. It's that simple. Whereas if it's someone like, I don't know, I think running backs, obviously, just as standard lines, are a little more risky on a building team, but they're still decent targets if you get a good trade because teams will be more interested in them when they're healthy, and it's that window that fades eventually. So yes, potentially, but it gets a little more tricky depending on which side of that 15% spectrum you're on.
Yeah, it's the buy window on Kyler. It was the buy window on Cooper Kupp. It's the buy window on Breece Hall, especially where they just signed Dalvin Cook. Like those are absolutely players. And the cool thing, Freak, is if you buy players who are injured but will score points and you're rebuilding, you don't have to worry about them scoring points while they're injured. So that helps your rebuild.
Actually,
then when they come back, you can make a decision whether the market has overcorrected and you can trade them for other pieces that continue to help you lose, but also add value, or you can decide to hang on to them. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility to being able to buy players, because if you have good players who are not playing at this point in time because they're injured, and you know that there is a better than average chance they're going to come back, it's a positive by being a negative. Like because they're not scoring for you, and because your team then continues to fall behind, your picks get better. It increases your rebuild. Plus, when you get them back and you add that pick, it's a double bump. So it's a great way to play if you can find those players.
It's a good example of why I try and talk in the general sense, because if you keep that open for yourself and don't just say sell running backs, buy wide receivers. Yeah. Like everyone in your league knows running backs are a bigger risk. Like everyone's a short dynasty player. I'm definitely not smarter than anyone in an average league. But if I talk in the generic, then I can see that this is a way they're not doing what they know to be a good idea, because you open up that window for yourself, essentially. I'm a rebuilding team buying a running back, but it's because I know fairly once that risk is gone, once they are back on the field, once they are good again, I'll be able to trade them as a rebuilding team for things that I actually need. And sometimes in sharp leagues, those are the only edges that are left. It's not outsmarting them. It's just, taking the burden of rostering them where they don't score points. Like I'll burn my roster spot because, like Zach says, that actually helps me out. What's my roster spot worth? I want it to be doing less. You want it to be doing more. I'll give you. So it just leaves that window open for yourself. Even in sharp leagues, you can do good moves that way. Again, not most of the time. If you don't get a good trade on it, then it's definitely not worth it for a rebuilder. But yeah, leave that window open for yourself. Explore it. Send an offer, see what happens. That kind of thing. Pixie and Panic, great show. Thanks, man. Thanks very much.
Appreciate you.
We try our best. It's a lot better when Zach's back, obviously.
I was here last week too.
Yeah, we didn't care that. We didn't can it. We decided to rewrite the history.
You were already
We're like, we'll delete that part.
Yeah.
And yeah. The Big Ham. Dollar for your thoughts. I hope it makes it into yours wallet somehow. Yeah, and I joke. I'm assuming it turns up on my YouTube ad revenue or something, but I don't actually make enough where I get sent a check yet. Don't worry about it. We really appreciate it. And dollars are fine. That's literally the entire cost of my whole Patreon sub. I don't ask for more. That's fine. God, don't pay more than $1 for me. Jesus. Puff Pass Kick. 12 team Superflex Lamar, Bateman, or Geno Smith, JSN, and 24 first. Ooh. So this is the how you get into that Lamar category of QB, and you get Bateman, a nice little stack. Generically, I prefer JSN. Like, he's a shiny thing to me in this deal. I'm trying. As Lamar's value increases, the closer we get to the season, the less in I am on convincing everyone that he should be there. If you know what I mean? Again, It's all relative to ADP. And I think people are starting to realize he probably will pass more, and he's pretty good at that this season. But in a Superflex, it probably breaks the Lamar side.
So here's a question.
Right.
Oh, actually, two-part question. Do you think that you can get up to Tua with a 24 first in Geno Smith? Because I think that's close. Okay. And if you can, do you think you can? Would you rather have Lamar and Bateman or Tua and JSN?
That's a good way of saying it. Like, Dak is out there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You can get JSN and then make moves to try and get another of those quarterbacks in the Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson tier. I think that's smart. Yeah, that's a better way. I think this is why I suck at trades. I never would have thought about it that way. But yeah, that's good. That's smart.
I don't like. This is a trade where I don't like. It's really hard to lose this trade, and that's a good trade because Lamar should be fantastic. Lamar may have a better season than we're even giving him credit for, because the idea is all of a sudden this offense opens up a little and he throws more than he has, and he's actually a very good thrower of the football. He hasn't been given credit for it because he's done a ton with his legs, but he's a very, very adequate. He's an above average thrower. And so I think that's a good side of the trade. I just prefer,
and I like getting Bateman, obviously.
Yeah.
So I think it's a well-balanced trade. Yeah.
I much prefer JSN to Bateman. Like if you're gonna put those two on the table, and I think I can get close enough to Lamar with Geno Smith and a 24 first that I'm happy.
So you're upgrading at wide receiver because sneakily you think you can get back there. And Geno isn't too far off. Top 12 wouldn't be out of his range. But you can also go out and try and get a Lawrence, a Fields if you liked him, which I personally don't. And you say the team already has Fields. So yeah.
You could probably, I don't know how competitive you are, but you could probably get Kyler pretty close, like not much on top of Geno Smith. You may be able to hang on to your 24 first and trade somebody else and get Kyler. And then all of a sudden next year you got Kyler, JSN, and you're adding a first, and then all of a sudden you have done quite a trick.
But I wish I could think like that. No, but that's smart. Yeah, I like that. What's the gap between JSN and Addison?
There's not one.
Yeah, I was gonna do that. Yeah, it's
the the gap for me is it's easier to see Addison producing early this year, and it looks like JSN probably produces toward the end of the year and into next year. But they're both
well,
awesome.
That's what I was going to say. The difference is what in your league, assuming they're on two different rosters, is the JSN are disappointed because they have Metcalf and will lock it, then JSN's better because he's more likely to trade him. It's the person who rostering Addison got him at the 109 and thinks he just he's not a big. Then Addison's the one I want him. Like that's the only difference. It's how the people in my league feel about him.
But
I have multiple leagues where I have both, and I'm pretty happy.
They're both awesome. Like JSN is the new kind of prototypical slot, high volume, and able to create after the catch. And to me, Addison is very, very similar to that Jalen Waddle archetype, where he can go down the field a little bit, but he can also quick hit, and he changes speeds better than almost any receiver that I have watched coming out of college in the last 4 or 5 years. Addison does. So Addison doesn't ever hit you with his fastball coming out of the gate. He'll sit there and he'll be going at like 80, 85%, and then he'll make his move, and then all of a sudden he's at 100%, and you've got to try to catch up to his move plus 15% speed, and it makes him super dynamic. I was watching a little bit of the game this past, I think it was Thursday night, and there was a play on the sideline where Addison came out and ran an out route and just like abused the defender. The ball was put a little bit high. He caught it. He actually got 2 feet down because it's the preseason. They're kind of mailing in replays, and so they didn't give it to him. But it was a 20-yard catch with a 2-foot toe tap on the sideline, and you're just like, yeah, he's arrived. This is a guy who's going to be making big plays. So
he appears to be elevating. Nice.
Yeah,
no problem. The freak.
Thanks.
Appreciate you, man. Great job. Nice to meet you. Tank Dell worth a second or yet, or are we holding out for a first? It's a good question, actually. I've been looking at my rosters, and one of the things I'm trying to move into the value category is preseason hype candidates, right? Mm-hmm. And Tank Dell's kind of in that category. I like his profile a lot, but I much preferred it when it was me, you, and Dupree, like 3 months ago, barely, and anyone barely knew his actual name and liked him because you could get him for that mid-third. In general, as a principle, yes, but I'm not trading him for a second. I want to use him as a second to tier up to get a player I like even more. Like, that's the only way I'm going to move a rookie even deep down that far. Like, because like everyone else, I drafted him. I don't want to see how it works out because that's where I take my risk. But yeah, it would be fair to think of him as that if he's now worth a second round pick. Yeah,
and he just had the bit like this is the preseason hype season. He had a tipped touchdown that he caught in the end zone on his back after like bobbling it, and he got open fairly consistently, and so look, if you can, yes, like I think Peter's.
If you can take like, Tank Dell and go get someone that you would rather have gotten that rookie draft,
Addison, Mims, Flowers, Mims,
then yes, you should do it, and which means you should use him if he's suddenly worth that much to do those things. But again, most moves aren't available in most leagues. You might try it and strike out, which is fine. You just still got the Tank Dell that we all know and love because he's a tank. 2 tanks. Bonzera, I tried. I'm sorry. Hi guys. 1 QB Dynasty. How much should it cost to move from Lawrence to Tua? Same tier, should be same value. Tua's got a little more injury risk, and Lawrence I think is higher valued for most people because they expect another bump this year. I think that's exaggerating it, but I think. Sorry, let me finish reading it. I really like Lawrence. Good thing to do. Think he can be top 5. But someone is trying to buy him. What should I do? You can just keep Lawrence because that's the same tier. Unless they're offering you a first and not really exciting you to move off, you can just keep Lawrence. You can just keep the guy that you like. Unless they give you a reason to trade him away. And if they're just offering you Tua, they've got to offer something else to you that you like. And that's fair. That's what they would do to you. You just got to remember they're not going to give you things that you like and they like just because you like them. And you should do the same back. They're going to have to really tempt you. A first-round pick. Not that is the value difference, But if they really want Lawrence, they have to give you something shiny too, you know?
And I think that is a really good thing to keep in mind, is just because you're getting the value doesn't mean you have to make that trade. And if it's not a sweetheart deal, if it's not a deal that is going to make you actually want to give up Trevor Lawrence, then don't. Because just getting an incremental value increase is not necessarily.
I mean, why not just keep the guy?
Yeah, it's not worth it, especially if you think that Lawrence can be top 5, which he absolutely. Trevor Lawrence is
very talented.
He's the best quarterback prospect that I have watched coming out of college. Now, again, I always talk about quarterback evaluations as we're playing darts blindfolded in a hurricane. So it's not necessarily the most accurate endeavor that we can go on. But I do think Trevor Lawrence is really good, and I don't think that you necessarily have to tear down from Lawrence to Tua, unless and Peter, I think you hit that on the nail too. Is it's got to be at least a first, and you may not.
You got to be getting something
that's fine.
That you want, or at least that you think is that's sexy value, and that's why I say a first. Switch this to Fields. I'd say the same thing, but I'd also say I don't like Fields that much. I would be interested in doing that. Yeah. That would be the difference. That's the only. I have looked at this offseason. I was like Dak Prescott and Justin Herbert. Depends what moves available in your league. You don't want to trade Lawrence, so you can stop listening right now. But if you wanted to trade Lawrence, those are the two players I'd be interested in. Lawrence is kind of the same tier, but I like him more. And so I'm really interested if I just have to add a little to Lawrence to get Herbert. I'm very happy with that. Or if you're looking for value, you can go to the Dak owner and say, what will you give me? Will you give me a first with Dak to get Lawrence? And I think that's a fair trade too. So those are the two directions I go with someone like Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields if I want to trade them. You don't want to trade them though, so it's up to them to give you something that makes you willing to do it. And that's what fair value is at the end of the day. It's not, well, the ADP suggests. That tells you the value range. Now you have to set the advantage coming to the other team, whether you're sending an offer or getting an offer, has to be something you think is worth it. It has to be something you like, is the way I describe it. And I think that's the way of thinking it through, my dude. Like, you like Lawrence, and he's not offering you anything shiny that you think really improves your roster one way or the other to change. So I'm not gonna. And now you could also get Lawrence wrong, and there might be a teachable moment here. But if we make decisions based on we're probably wrong all the time, we're going to go insane. Frankly, we'll only ever have draft picks and we'll never win. So, yeah. N to the power of 4, I think. And to a factor of 4, I can't remember. 14-team, 1 QB league. Gave ETN Bigsby, received CMC. You won. Okay, I like that. Yeah, CMC is the goal if you're looking for a running back. As long as you're a fairly competitive team, CMC side, please. And Elijah Mitchell, that's a nice ad. I really like Tank Bigsby. You're rostering your own handcuff, which again is fine. But I think CMC is he's the end boss in searching for running backs. So I like the CMC side.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like that, you got the running back one.
Yeah, and
at least points-wise,
isn't where I'm going to play younger and valuable, unless the other types of trade we were talking about, where they're in a lagging window because of an injury. Right. And outside of that, I want the best scorer. So that's, yeah. James Tucker, what round should Addison go in Dynasty startup drafts? Superflex 10 teams start 12. It's a good question we get every year, like when to draft rookies, and it's usually higher than you would think. It's typically the best answer because those value swings really are what drive Dynasty. And if you have a strong opinion on those players, then you should go for it. It's typically my philosophy. Hang on, I can actually answer it directly from DLF ADP here. Let's see. JSN's going in round 4. Addison's going in round 6. So I would be happy taking Addison in round 4 because, again, I feel very similar.
Yep. Peter,
pretty hot.
You studied up while I was gone. This is nice.
I did.
I can just say yes. Peter has done.
Well, I had nothing else to do, so I was like, I'm gonna go read Zach's script for a change. Go listen to his podcast, learn the answers. Finally, Rambo. Okay, you talked me into it. Oh God, what did I do? I'm just gonna ride tank to the moon. Yeah, I mean, if you get a good trade, you should definitely consider it. But like we were just talking about, was Bonzaria. Again, sorry about that. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that wrong. Bonzera? I don't know. Unless you're getting something that you like, then why not just keep on keeping on? Ultimately, if it's just a second, that's about where I would have held his value anyway. So now on a building team, you avoid the risk, to be fair. So I think if he's a should have been on a team that's in that bottom 15%, definitely building, sure, I'd take a second. But anywhere in the middle, towards anywhere at the end, yeah, I'd take a second. That's fine. Samson Simpson. Good evening, gents. Thank you very much, man.
Hey,
Appreciate
Samson.
that. Appreciate you turning up. Yep. It's actually the end of the comments, and I know you wanted to go home early, but it is pretty early.
Really early. Yeah.
Put any thought into the type of trade you're almost always looking to do in Dynasty. Again, tearing up is one of mine, and I know you said that similarly. I also thought, and I think it made the list, trading for a different making onesie position. So even in a 1 QB or in a non-super flex, non-tight end premium, try to get one of those difference makers. That's always something you should look to do in most situations. I thought that was a pretty good example because that's something you can easily do. I don't have Kittle, Kelsey, Andrews. Who does? Yep. You can immediately go see if that's.
And like this year, it's like I think the cheapest player that you can add that could potentially be in that tier is Waller.
Yeah.
I mean, he's done it before.
He's actually literally done it before. Yeah.
He's done it before. He's on a team that has a little bit of a scarce landscape at wide receiver. And so it's not as though he's competing, with the 88 49ers where you get John Taylor and Jerry Rice. Like he's got a pretty open depth chart. There's kind of a dearth of pass catchers. And
I really like because you've mentioned that on the Rate My League pods, I always think it's a really good point. And I actually put some thought into why that's not been a move for me though, because it's a really good one. It's like Evan Ingram. He seems like a really good target for that. Get a tight end. Yeah. There's a tight end. And it's because, again, you can't do all moves for all teams. And where I'm trying to restrict the number I'm in, like only take a few shots. It either goes, I'm going for Kittle, or I'm Pat Freiermuth, and the value can only go so many places. I think Waller and Ingram are a really good place to go otherwise, but so far I've been able to make those. And so it's just the Ingram and Waller thing isn't happening for me.
If I can get Waller cheaper than I can acquire Freiermuth, then I'm going to do that. And that's not
that's the thing. Like I think that's perfectly fair. I just go the other way.
We have just a slightly different opinion of Freiermuth because I think you have him like up in like real close to that next tier, and I have him kind of like just at the top of the tier after that, and it's not a knock at him. He's fantastic. Yeah,
typical Dynasty mistake, right? I like the younger guy. It could simply just be I'm a little getting a little Dynasty age blinded. I like that he's due touchdowns, but I don't think that necessarily, especially at tight end, based on that research I did for my last episode, I don't think it's more likely he scores more points despite that, because tight end is the least likely to have a positive reaction that way. So that sucks. I would love to roll out the regression argument for Freiermuth because he had targets 1 year, then he had touchdowns 1 year, then targets. Now we just need them together. And he's actually just more likely to be stable. I just continue to, I'm this far into it. I just keep going. Samson, how you doing? 12-team 1 QB trade start 8 traded away Amon-Ra, ETN, and a 24 first for Jefferson. Oh, that's one of those big boy trades. It's a tear up trade that I get, but I'm like, I love Amon-Ra so bad. But it's ETN a first to jump that tier so much. But
it's a good trade, but that's a hard trade.
That's what I was thinking about the Mahomes, trading Jefferson and Chase to get into the Mahomes tier. Like, it's such a good idea because they are really excited about doing it. If you have Jefferson and Chase, you can normally execute it, and it makes sense because the position. But man, it makes me squirm. I'm like, but I had Amon-Ra St. Brown. I was pretty happy. But no, it's a really strong offer. You made a trade partner for life. And honestly, if you can trade for Jefferson and trade for Chase or trade for Mahomes and Allen, you should just do that. And you did. So applauses. You got more guts than I do. I'm way too youthy Dynasty sometimes. That's what it is. I'm like, oh no.
I mean that's a big boy, trade. But you get the wide receiver one.
I'm not going to tell you I have the guts to do that in Dynasty, but think if I could stick to the process, it would say that's a smart trade. So yeah, you're beating me in the league apparently. Almost missed this week. Never, Genji. I don't believe you. Trade away Condre Miller, who's injured again right now, I think, for Bateman last week. What do we think? It's about the right value, and I prefer Bateman. I think Condre Miller's he's running back versus wide receiver. That's what this is. It's what your roster construction can most sustain. It could be wide receiver or could be running back at pretty similar value points per game, what my expectations for him would be should they earn it. So yeah, I prefer the Bateman side, and I think it's fairly fair. Yeah. Although this is one of the other thing about making a trades target. I have to excuse them. Like the trades everyone on Twitter says you won. Those don't happen a lot. I've seen Bateman for a third or the value of a third in trades. I'm like, man, I wish I could get that because that's easy. That's a walk-off win, even if it doesn't work out. But most of the time we don't get that value, and this is fair. Doing my first auction draft this year. Any tips? 12 teams, Superflex start 8. Yeah, follow John Bosch.
John Bosch FF.
Gilchrist. They both work for the Dynasty Trade Calculator. They do a lot more auctions than I do. I listen to them on auctions. And also the pretty cool people that know Dynasty really well. Don't tell them I said that at all. We fight. But they're heavy into auctions. They love it. It's their favorite, I think, way of drafting or working a fantasy league. And they're very, very smart at it. There are some just basic ideas on auctions. So Zach, do you have any off the top of your head? I don't have my list worked out.
Well, so like John, I actually just spent the weekend hanging out with John and Bob Gilchrist. So we talked a little bit of auction strategy, although more about donut acquisition strategy this weekend. But one of the things that John said that really struck me is, so he did the auction panel at the Fantasy Football Expo, and somebody come on and said, you need to have your set values of players, going in, and you need to have ranges, and you need to know exactly what you're going to want to spend on each of these players. And John said, what happens when the player goes for $1 more than what you had allotted to spend on him, and you really want that player? And the answer is you've got to know kind of how you can reach and where you can make up for things. And he talked about throwing out players early in an auction who are probably $1 players, like cheap players. So you're going down into like the, player 100 to 130 or 140, and you're tossing those players out. Because if you get them for the minimum unit, so like let's say it's $1, then you're happy. If somebody bids $5 on that player, you're also happy because now they spent $5 on a player that really should have only cost them $1. So those two things I think are really important. Understanding that yes, there's a range, but also there is a way to make
game theory.
To make
there's a lot. Yeah.
And so if you can kind of keep that in mind, and also, Mike, I would get on whatever podcast app that you listen to, whether it is Apple Podcasts, whether it is, I'm trying to think what else I use, Pocket Cast or Spotify or whatever, and I would search John Bosch auction, and you'll get, and even if they're not recent podcasts, they're pretty evergreen because John talks a lot of strategy and not so many players. And listen to 2 or 3 of those, because man, does he do some really, really smart things. And shameless self-promotion, last year at this point in time, I brought John on the Dynasty Dummies doing my Edge Finder series. And so I brought on Peter, and I brought on Russ Fisher, who's an amazing trader, and I brought on J Mike, who evaluates his own team better than anybody I've ever met.
I was just saying, it's nepotism, to be clear. Peter, John's got auctions, Outhouse has got trades. I'm there for nepotism. Don't worry about it.
Peter, do not sell yourself short. like, no, don't sell yourself short, because you are the person in this industry that I personally rely on the most, because I don't have the ability to see things the way you do with the numbers. And I was talking, I'm going to name drop a little bit because I was hanging out with Chris Allen and Jay Mike and Adam Wilde, and we were talking. We were talking strategy and theory, and I said one of the things that matters the most to me in my process, and Mike, I'm getting off topic because this isn't necessarily auction, but one of the things that matters most in my process is talking to people who think differently than I do, but come to things in a similar way, which sounds weird, but like have a process and be transparent about the process. And the thing, Peter, I love about what you do is, because you're scraping the data and because you've got access to all of these players, you can cast this huge net. So you're trawling. You are one of the the fishing vessels that you see out off the coast that just has the the trawling, the gill nets, and you're hauling up all of the fish, and you can kind of examine them and figure out which ones. And
tell he's from Maine. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, we're not hauling up lobster traps, but I'm line fishing. Like, I have to, because I can only watch 60 or 70 players in an off season. I don't have the ability to watch 250 players. So when you cast that net and say, okay, you need to watch these 8 players or 10 players, or you have players that you like that I haven't watched, I'll go watch them, because that game, I get that advantage. I now can go line fish for those players, as opposed to like having to try to narrow it down by some, like, I don't know, like, I guess I could put all the names up on a dartboard and like do that, but it's so beneficial to me to have that, and also as a series of checks and balances the way I do my analysis, because if you and I disagree, you can be very sure that I'm going to go back and I am going to try to figure out, I'm going to rewatch the player, and I'm going to see if there's anything that I missed, whether it's good or bad, whether you didn't like a player or whether you liked a player, I'm going to go back and watch and try to figure out where we disagree. And if I still disagree with you, I'm going to break ties to me. But oftentimes I'll go back and watch, and I'm like, oh shoot, like I missed this. And so it's important.
People are
to
always,
have that.
The opinions that differ are always, well, not always, but are often more interesting because they give you the chance to reassess. Like, finding out what you did wrong is the most important. So finding out what you might be getting wrong in advance is like a really important thing. But that's not me. Like, follow Judges Egarison or someone. I just use data to try and fact check the historical trends. What I'd say about auctions, my limited experience, I've done a fair few, and I really do like the idea of them, but they're so involved. It's like, what metaphor did I come up with? I can't remember, but the skill gap between auction players is larger and more significant than a regular snake draft guy like me. Like, the guys that are really good at auctions can crush the guys that are just pretty good. Whereas in a snake draft, like, everyone's got a good chance. Honestly, you follow ADP, you follow some basic rules, and mostly we've shrunk the skill gap to where it doesn't matter. Like, I have a shot against JJ Zacharyson and John Bosch. Like, that's how crazy it is. But in an auction like that exacerbates. So it is important to do a little bit of research, a little bit of practice, and get some advice. Again, there are better people for advice on this. But my limited experience, one of the things I've started to install on myself is, one, don't underrate the number of players that are still left that you would really like to add to a regular roster once all the money's gone. Like the $1 players, the zero bid players, when everyone's spent out, you get some players that you would easily draft within the first 10 rounds of a snake draft, because it's a very studsy and dudsy approach. The other thing, and related to that, is don't be afraid of going studs and duds. Like 95% on a budget I've seen spent on Mahomes. And it works. They still had a pretty good team and were pretty competitive after that. I'm not telling you to do that because, again, I'm not that shark in the auction to tell you that's always a good move or whatnot, but it can be. And like I said, because of that, because people are going to spend up on those big ticket items, I think that's why there's always, like, there's a Jerry Jeudy left at the end for $3. And you're like, what the hell? I just spent 10 on Bateman. How did someone get 3 for Jerry Jeudy? So have a list, like a draft sheet, which isn't going to help you out as much, but keep track of who's available. Something JJ Zacharyson said on his podcast is be aware of the you. I don't know. In a tier of players, the first few tend to be more expensive, and then there's a lull as people realize there's still more people there's too many people in the tier, and then the last few in the tier get bumped up again because of the fear that their tier's about to run out. So you can track things like that and be like, oh, yes, Mahomes is going for 95% of someone's budget, and Allen looks like he's going to do the same, but who's going to be left to compete for Burrow and Herbert and Dak? Yeah. And you're like, oh, okay, I see a way in this auction that I can... Again, I'm not going to tell you how to auction. I'm not that guy. But those are some of the things I've observed from playing on him. Like tracking that stuff is really important. And the skill gap in it makes it more important that you actually do have a list. Like I think it's a good idea in a draft league to have a list, check who's available, not follow the ADP on the site, that basic stuff. In an auction, it's almost essential. Like you have to know what's going on. You have to know how much and who has what left, which direction they seem to be going. Who's left in that? You have to keep some sort of track of it. I think, as far as I can see. Sorry, Zach,
and it's also important to keep an eye on, especially early, where the prices are, because if you do have that idea of what players should be going for, and all of a sudden you see players going for under that, get in because sometimes people are waiting. Now, if you see it and players are going for 10, 15% over where they should be going, then back up, because very shortly there's going to be a lot of value to be had. So it's not like, one size.
Like Mahomes and Allen going for $100, and then you see for some reason for like 17 hours on the clock, Herbert's going for 20. You're like, what's going on? And then you realize someone like John Bosch and Bob Gilchrist has created that at just the right time that they've got Herbert soon to go off the board for 20, and like, how did they do that? I don't know, but they're all about creating the effects that they're looking for, I think. And like that is one example of it. It's just one example. The best I can do as just a dynasty grinder is like try to see where they are, where they're being created, if you know what I mean, because they do just submit all those $1 players, and even if you bid 2 or 3, they know you're ticking away your budget, so later they'll get an advantage while going for whoever is left in that tier later down the line. But follow John, follow Bob. They do a lot of podcasts, to be fair. Dynasty Trade Calculator podcast, honestly one of the most enjoyable listens I listen to, and it's not DLF Network, so it's not like a branded thing. I love the Wall Street one, and Russ is on that one. That's part of why I love it. But also it's just a really good podcast. And they talk auctions and value there a lot, and that'll help out. But practice and really have some way of keeping track, even if it's just copy and paste Fantasy Pros ADP and mark them out as you go, just so you know who's available. And tier them for yourself. Like doing your own rankings is maybe a little more involved than you want to go, but at least have a good idea of like, this is where I think the elite players are, and this is an okay tier, and this is the rest, whatever. Just try and follow some of that. But we got way too far off into auctions, considering neither of us are like, oh yeah, we know. So I should probably move on. Picked up Ronnie Bell. I have too. He's just one of those profiles left in the trash gutter after I finished my profiling, where I'm like, oh yeah, that was better than I thought it was. So if I've got, again, I can roster more could be's at wide receiver. He's one of very high depth rosters that I'll hold on to. Trey Palmer a little bit for week 1, and I think I'm a genius. Thanks, Pete. Oh, Genji, thanks for checking that out. I think you're a genius. I don't think they're genius moves, but they're interesting. If your roster construction can handle that, could be a wide receiver, which means you have to have thick running backs. I think that's a balance. And then I think they're interesting. We have low hopes, but we have hope. Talk to me about Bateman. Do you want to do a bit? Like, I don't have stats to quote. I just have a general sense where I'm at. That's where I play. But you can describe how he plays and if he's good.
Bateman is one of the players now that scares me profile-wise, Peter.
He's become a little more scary. Yeah.
Well, and because the profile, like, I am starting to become leery of players that I watch that I'm like, they just get it done. I'm not sure how they get it done. David Bell was that way. Brian Edwards was that way. Rashad Bateman was that way. And I had them all graded out highly, but they just kind of were in the right spot all the time. Like Bateman was the player that, like, if you watched one time, you're like, like, it's fine. And like I compared him to the Mona Lisa, because you, like, if you look at the Mona Lisa, you're like, well, whatever, it's a smirking woman. But then if you sit there and, like, you take in everything and all of the minutia and the subtleties to Bateman's game, you're like, oh, well, like, he does a lot of things right, and he's always open, and it's not necessarily always on speed. Sometimes it's on savvy, but that type of player, at least in my analysis, those types of players have kind of struggled. And I like Bateman. I want to be excited about Bateman. I want to have Bateman be here for the year 3 breakout and all of that. But I'm leery of, I mean, we had the question earlier that was JSN tied to Geno Smith or Bateman tied to Lamar Jackson, and there was a first on the JSN side. And I'm like, I want the first, because I'm a lot more confident in JSN and the way he plays and the way that will translate to the NFL than I am about Bateman as a third-year breakout after they got Flowers, after they got Odell Beckham. You're hoping that Lamar Jackson takes a step forward as a passer. You're hoping that he doesn't run as much. You're hoping that maybe J.K. Dobbins doesn't, eat into a little bit more. Like, there's a whole lot of if this with Bateman that makes me a little leery. And it's not that I don't like Bateman, because I do. And I had Bateman rated highly, and I think he was my wide receiver 4 in that class, if I remember right. I could go back and look, but he was right around there. He was either 4 or 5. I really liked him, but
you should look for patterns and trends. I imagine with film evaluation, that's really good. And it makes me nervous. From my process, there's some reasons to be nervous on him. He missed his key breakout window last year, but he got injured, and missed time can be an excuse. The real thing that I'm betting on is the missed time and the fact he's been good while available, and his ups and downs in value have been purely market driven, by which I mean he hasn't been better or worse. It's just been people hyping and not hyping. And I always kind of like taking advantage of that, to the point that I had predicted his value arc like before his first season started. And so far I've gotten it right. And because people way overvalued his ceiling, and then they way undervalued how good he was in his rookie year. And then they way undervalued him right now, I think, based on the fact that he got hurt last year. He was actually operating way too efficiently during the first start of the season before he got hurt. And he was going to regress a little bit. But it was really impressive that he was being utilized that much. And he had acquired the volume that if he had finished the year, he would have entered that was a good bounce back sophomore campaign. And that's where I'm at on him. I think he's actually capable of earning volume. I think it's slightly muted because he's been injured. And I think the disappointment felt in the market is more because everyone else thought he was literally like a top 12 wide, like a Jalen Waddle and Chase Claypool year 1, which I don't think was ever in his range of outcomes. I think he's more Elijah Moore, positive rookie season, which now looks like a bad example. Or Christian Kirk, which finally looks like a good example. But I think he has that muted ceiling, but really good expectation on a team that clearly plans to have him as part of their passing offense. Unfortunately, they could change their plans at any point this far out from his draft capital. And he keeps having injury problems, but that's not something I can predict. I think he is capable. And I think he's shown when healthy that he is that guy on that team with a muted expectation, but clearly volume, clearly going to have opportunities. On a team with Lamar Jackson at quarterback, is always going to have scoring opportunities, not to mention red zone opportunities and moving the ball down the field fairly regularly, in my opinion. So that's where I'm at on him. I could quote target, or I could look it up. Target share and his routes per route run, they've never been overly impressive, but they're impressive relative to his situation. And I think once you take into account that efficiency early in his second season, and his overall volume relative to his path through the NFL, if we can give him that missed time excuse, he's actually been decent. He's been really good. And nearly kicked that prediction of mine's butt, because early he was operating at such high touchdown efficiency, everyone thought he had arrived. When in fact, I had to say he's probably going to still less touchdowns pretty soon, but the volume should keep up. So yeah, that's my Bateman thing. At his value, I don't think there's a better. Yeah, this definitely has ceiling. I think the player's done enough to prove it. Type of pick, especially with that draft capital. But that's where I'm at. There you go, Genji. That's as quick as much as I can do right now. James Tucker, crazy take. Mahomes jumped back suddenly, unexpectedly, into quarterback one. Is there a takeaway where he takes a step back? Has an off year, like 2 years ago, similar to the other big boy trade, is Mahomes. So, no, I wouldn't predict a bad year for Mahomes, but then again, I don't think Justin Herbert had a bad year last year, so it's all relative. Josh Allen has been like the quarterback one. Like everyone forgets that. Like that's what happened last year. Josh Allen was a little tiniest bit worse than he usually is for fantasy. And that was the difference. Mahomes, no, I think Mahomes is going to keep being elite. We're looking at double decade long careers at quarterback, and Mahomes is in that category. Like I've got no concern. Could it be less spectacular than we know Mahomes can do? Yeah. I mean, he's really, like, to your point, only had that 1 year that was super duper amazing. And the passing offense is weaker this year. I don't care about how much hype we feast on Justin Ross, or if you like Sky Moore, or if you like Rashee Rice, who I like two of those guys quite a bit, or Tony, I guess. I think it's weaker with the loss of those veterans who can definitely perform a sterling role, like McCall Hardman and Juju, with Travis Kelce just being the shiny thing. There are more questions there. So, yeah, it could be less than spectacular, but less than spectacular Mahomes is still, like, don't fade it kind of level of production for fantasy. So, yeah, I mean, everyone can have a worse year. And Mahomes is always a prime candidate to have more love than production because we really love Mahomes. Again, it was edgy to have Allen over Mahomes the last 2 years. And I did it just because purely you got points for free. Yes, I had Mahomes, but I was consistently, you had Mahomes, but I was consistently scoring more points with Allen. So what are we doing here? We just didn't want to us nerds didn't want to make that adjustment because we got toasted by Allen. And I got completely toasted by Allen. But just being willing to be that little bit quicker to be wrong was actually the edge there, or accept that we were wrong. Not by after the end. By the way, I think anyone that thought he was great after year one still has a piss poor process. Numbers wise, he shouldn't have been good. That he was means that you bet on something that was unlikely, and now you're claiming that you predicted it. And I always find that a little shaky, but. I mean, it worked out. So now it's a perpetual excuse for any lower likely outcome. Don't know why I'm getting into Allen, but honestly, I think the Mahomes conversation is one about Josh Allen more than anyone else. Do you think, because I realize I might for the first time not be at the front car of the Jalen Hurts train. Like, is he in the Mahomes Allen category now, Zach, for you? Like, it's hard for me to come up with a reason he's not, and yet somehow... Yeah, psychologically, I don't think of him there, but it's probably fair to put him in that category now, right?
Yeah, I would think so. And yeah, honestly, I think I think Herbert's in that category too, even though he had. Yeah, I do.
I don't do a lot of quarterback evaluation, so I haven't been pushing it, but I don't see why he wouldn't, like, more than Joe Burrow. I don't see why Herbert wouldn't have the inline. But sorry, carry on.
No, but like that. I don't necessarily see trading Mahomes unless you're going to get a huge or unless you're going to get something on top of it. Like if I could move back to Herbert and get a first, like I would do that. But like trading away Mahomes with the idea that he probably won't be the QB1 is just a weird bet to me because there are like 4 guys that could be the QB1 and they could all score big points, but it's not like year to year you don't know which one it's going to be. I mean, it's always like I know that you kind of cringe when John Hogue talks about like Justin Jefferson and how he's probably not going to be the wide receiver one because he was the wide receiver one last year. And while that's probably true, he could be the wide receiver one the next 3 out of the 3 out of the next 5 years. And that's why you go get Jefferson, not because year over year over year over year he's the wide receiver one, but because he's so consistent that over the long term he is the wide receiver one. And I think Mahomes is very similar that way, where like he may not always finish the one, but he's going to be right in that mix every single time.
Yeah, the only way I'd really consider trading Mahomes is Herbert, because you get a couple years, and with a plus on Herbert, I think you're just laughing. But you gotta, I would expect to be disappointed not to have Mahomes the next 5-10 years. Or if I'm complete rebuild and you just get wealth of value, like we talked about with the trader earlier, like that's it. I think Allen's interesting, and that's why Hurts is interesting. That's why I was asking, because outside of Allen and Herbert, maybe you could try Hurts. Like some people legitimately have them as QB1 in their ranks, and I kind of get it. It's hard not to see. Now I'm the guy who doesn't like draft capital. What? But honestly, yeah, it's just holdover bias, I guess, because literally there's no reason not to put him in that category now.
Right.
Like the only other of there's Mahomes, is Allen, and now Hurts, and I think Herbert could kind of belong. But there you go. Just say when you're going to go, Zach. I know you've been driving for like 23 out of the last 24 hours, so you can just.
I'm still hanging in there, but it's not going to be too much longer. I'm pretty tired. Yeah. But
Mike, 12-team QB start 8. Give the 105, the 107, get Waddle. 1 QB, yes, because you might get Addison there, but you're getting Waddle there, and so yeah, I'll take the boat of them, maybe a boat, especially because Waddle's so young and in that category already. I think that's the same answer for you, Zach, if I remember right. I think we've had this before.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Samson traded with Russ in tight end 4. Good job. Although it's not hard. Russ
trade addicts.
Literally always trade with anyone. He's very good that way. Gave up John Johnson. Got back Tony and a 24 third.
Oh. Yeah, I was going to say, this is one of those where I look and I go,
I'm not really interested in Tony or John. I would probably give the edge to Tony, I guess.
I don't know. In a 175 premium, I think it's a slight edge to Juwan Johnson, but not a big one.
Put it this way, Samson. I think if any of us ever walked away from a trade thinking we got one over on Russ, we're probably wrong. Or he'll make up for it and spite trade his way to victory just to ruin the pick that you got from him. That's Russ. But he also gives fair trades, and I think that's what you got here. So, yeah, and Tony's probably got more immediate upside, yeah. Or any kind of upside, actually. James Tucker, amazing Dynasty content. Thanks very much, James. Any Dynasty podcasts either of you recommend? I recommend the Dynasty Dummies, who a friend of mine's on. Also, the ones I just mentioned that are outside the DLF network. Sorry, DLF, but the Dynasty Trade Calculator podcast, Dynasty Wall Street. Like, I listen to very few podcasts these days because I'm trying to make so much content. But I listen to those for sure. JJ Zacharison's Late Round podcast is always the most listened. And mine, I guess. I hope people listen to that at some point. Any others that you strongly recommend? I was trying to think which other one Dynasty podcast I actually still listen to.
Well, I mean,
the DLF podcast, obviously. I do listen to the Superflex Super Show, but that's because I like it when my blood pressure goes up.
So I always listen. I mean, Peter, I always listen to your show, Dynasty Grind. I always listen to Trade Addicts, and those are kind of my go-to. And then you mentioned JJ Zacharyson absolutely every week, and so those are kind of my go-to. And then here and there I'll listen to some other ones, but those are the must listen to every single week for me.
Trade Addicts podcast, Dynasty Trade Calculator. Yeah. These are the ones I said, right? Dynasty Wall Street, which I really think is one of the more interesting shows because it's literally just kind of trying to put value in practice to show you and me how value works in clever traders' minds, and it's really interesting. I listen to a lot of smaller podcasts as well, whose names I forget right now, just because they're really fun. It's where you have the fun. Dynasty Theory podcast. That's one that's recently added to the DLF network. I've only just started listening to it, but it's a little different. Again, I've got a little different focus, and that's kind of what I look for these days. And so I think that one's interesting. Yeah. And of course, all the DLF podcasts. Honestly, half the ones I just mentioned, if you follow the DLF podcast feed so you get all the DLF podcasts, and they cycle through while I'm doing other things. So yeah, I actually do like listening to the DLF podcast outside of mine own and John's and Russ's. So yeah. I really feel like I'm missing a podcast I should recommend. I mean, normally I would have said the one that keeps coming back to me. It is it's J Mike and my mind's
the open bar, but
Gabe. That's one I keep thinking I'm forgetting, but they haven't been making it in a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just I try and make up with that with listening to the dummies because I get my J Mike fix now there too. So, but I do miss the open bar quite a bit.
Yeah.
Go check out the previous episodes of that if you just want some fun. People having fun talking about Dynasty and playing silly little games and Gabe rapping. It's awesome. Oh, that's it. That's what I'm thinking of. Flashback podcast. Dynasty in Theory is a podcast series made for Dynasty. Fantasy in Theory. Yeah, it was Fantasy in Theory by Adam Harstead. There's like 17 episodes and only the first 8 are really episodes. But like they are amazing. They're I go back and listen to them fairly often, and I'm trying to make that, but I'm not good enough with the Dynasty Crossroads these days. And because I think those episodes were phenomenal. And that's still available. You can still download the first 8.
Yeah,
sorry.
I love going back and listening to fantasy football.
Fantasy in Theory.
He is absolutely brilliant. Adam Harstead, just brilliant.
Matt B, interesting. James Tucker, auction creates nuance but eliminates normal edge. Yeah, I mean, actually, it's a different creates game. A whole bunch of other edges.
Yeah,
really. Yeah, once you get into the league, it's just fantasy. But
for me, it's not better or worse. It's just it's a totally different animal, and I prefer to play snake, but that's just because that's what I'm used to, and I'm a creature of habit. But it doesn't mean that auction is bad. Like I think that either way, it creates an entirely separate set of problems and obstacles and things you need to solve, but also edges and places where you can gain advantages. So.
Yeah, where I'm not one of the 5% of elite players, like I like neutering that skill gap a little bit, I'll be honest. But also Snake is just, like you say, it's different. And it's a fun that I know and I'm used to, and I'm really a creature of habit. That's the honest reason. And if we never say Brian Edwards, it was spelled with a Y, but yeah, sure. Name again, I'd really appreciate it, and promise I'll never say Gabe Davis. Deal. Or Leonte Carew, or... Yeah. Who did I come across the other day? I was looking. I'm thinking about breaking down what went wrong in a league, and I was looking at my roster, my startup picks, and I was like, "Oh God, I forgot that guy." Was it Bruce Ellington? Like all these deeper sleepers that I used to just obsess over. And yeah, there's a lot of names in my past I'd rather we not mention, but this is a deal. To be fair, Gabe Davis has one of the best breakout percentages this year at the wide receiver position. Like that's the type of breakout year we're looking at. And he's going to at least maintain his points per game. I think the hype market does more for us than we could ever hope for, because it pushes up Gabe Davis's expectation, and everyone overpays, and then everyone pushes it way too far down because they're disappointed. And you're like, no, he was always this, and this is good. This is a week winning opportunity. But yeah, Gabe Davis is fine. I don't think there's any sin in having him on your roster at this point, especially. I prefer Bateman to Flowers. Me too, but that's because I'm a little low on Flowers' profile, but I'm willing to be proven wrong. So people that really like his profile, like really, really like it. I think Travis May is the one who said he is the most Antonio Brown-like rookie profile that we've seen. And obviously he's not making a comparison, but like that sticks with me. I'm like, God damn it. I like disagreeing with Travis, apart from the fact sometimes, quite often, he gets it right, and that makes it awkward. But yeah, I prefer Bateman to Flowers. Genji, I'll take a shot at him overcoming foot health issues. I really think that's a bet. If he can stay healthy, I think it pays off. But he has to at this point. 12-team 1 QB start 9 and looking to acquire Barkley to make a run this year. Try CMC first. Honestly, you'll find similar value, and CMC is better. For fantasy, I have the 101, the 105, the 107, the 108. Also, running backs like James Cook. Yeah, add him to the trade. Pacheco, Brees Hall. What would you package to get Barkley? If you're a competitive roster, you should be willing to give at least 3 of those first-round picks. And like if you give the 8, the 7, and the 5, that's a strong offer for Barkley. Like I don't know it's exactly fair, but you've got to give them something they want. So fair is what's going to get it done. And I would try and CMC first.
But
you're also going to get Bijan. Sorry, go.
No, I was going to say in a one quarterback league, then it's not as I'm not as worried about giving up the 105, the 107. Like that, if it was a super flex league, all of a sudden you're talking about, okay, we're giving up Bijan, JSN, 2 out of the 3 of Bijan, JSN, and Addison.
Well, only if you include the 101, but okay.
Well, no, in a super flex, Peter.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't mean Bijan. Sorry, Gibbs. Sorry.
Gibbs. Sorry. Yeah.
Not Bijan.
I was going to say that's perfectly fine. I just thought we were on the.
It was a mental typo. So you're giving up 2 out of 3 of Gibbs, Addison, and JSN. If that's a super flex, where it's a 1 quarterback league, I'm not as worried about that because your top 4 are going to be your Bijan, Gibbs, Addison, JSN. So then 105, 107, 108. Like I'm not. I think you'd be close to getting Barkley for 2 of those. But if you have to give up 3, that's fine. But Peter, I think you're right. I would go get I'm far more comfortable with Christian McCaffrey in terms of scoring and honestly in terms of security of where they are.
But that's Sorry, that's the best I can do for you, Samson. Like, I would offer those 3 picks. I would not want to trade the 101 and another pick and keep the depth picks in a 1 QB league. To be clear, that's what I'm trying to avoid. That's why I would go all the way up to offering the other 3. I mean, it's also fair, but I'd rather have Bijan and Barkley than have Barkley and, Quentin Johnson and maybe, I don't know, the 8's going to be someone you don't want. Well, not someone you don't. Quentin Flowers. Samson, Josh Allen was QB1 for 2 years in a row, which is incredibly rare, and then QB2 last year. I'm drafting him in leagues behind Mahomes, Hurts, Burrow. Yeah, and couldn't be happier. That's the thing. Like, I want Mahomes, but if you're going to let me get him a little less, Allen a little less, that still makes sense to me. When I asked, because I did ask my other Superflex rankers, because they are Mahomes across the board is 1. It was basically they justified it by Allen rushes, and rushes does seem to carry a lower expectation of career years. But I really think that's just a sample. Like, we've seen so few rush as much as Cam Newton did, as Lamar did, and it's becoming more prevalent. And Allen seems like the safest of the rushing bets, because there is literally QB1 upside there when most don't get there, and he's done it twice. So this is a Herbert take all over again. Like, obviously I want Mahomes, but if you're gonna give me stuff, I'll take the guy that's the only other guy that's in that category for most. In redraft, who do I take? CMC or Justin? Depends on the way you want to build. Yeah. But it's CMC by ADP. But these both go in the first round, so it's really pick justified. You take CMC and someone else is going to get Jefferson. You really have to decide between them. But that means it pushes your roster into a certain kind of build in redraft. You just kind of have to accept that. So you can take Justin. That's also fair. That's what I'm trying to say.
I would have to look and see, because right now it seems like this is a wide receiver year for a build. It's a 0 RB year. So maybe Justin Jefferson as the hammer, and then running back while they're still decent running back like that. Again, I'd have to look at it. I don't play enough redraft, Genji, to really
Yeah, that's part of my
But
if you can get Justin and then come back around and get Bijan Robinson because he's like early second round or something, then that's better than CMC plus whatever you get next. If you can, so you really got to consider the ADP where your pick is and what knowledge you have of your league. Honestly, that's the biggest way you play in Dynasty, having some idea of where your league's going to be. Because if this is a Dynasty league, I can tell you, even if it wasn't Dynasty, if it was just the Dynasty players, you have to go Jefferson because they're still going to stay heavy wide receiver. So that's your only opportunity. But yeah, I think either it's a very good pick. It's probably 50-50 which way I go, depending on what I think I'm going to get in round 2.
Yeah.
I'd offer Cook, Pacheco, and the 107 for Barkley.
Man, if you could
I'd do any
done,
combination outside of the 101. That's even cheaper. So I gave him the max offer I'd send out. I would take JJ because I hate Shanahan. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. You're allowed to hate things. Why not? And like I say, I think you're going to be pretty happy with either one.
Bob's trying to get me to bed.
He is. Look over there. He abused me for Garrett Wilson. I'm embarrassed to put that trade up here. Don't be, man. Trust me, I have done a worse one. Like, I've done some bad trades. It's part of the game. You're going to make your bets and just accept sometimes you get it wrong. It's fine. And, if Russ was here, which he will never be again, apparently, the only thing that fixes it is another trade. Like, try not to get trade shy, right? We can make a mistake. It doesn't mean you're always going to make a mistake. It's fine. You tried. Genji, and to be fair, we can be wrong. Since you're saying this is something that happened recently, maybe it works out for you. Are you taking Mark Andrews late second in redraft over any running back, wide receiver? No, probably not. I don't make that. If I can get Kittle in the 4th, that's the next tight end I'll take a shot at. I think it's fair that Andrews goes in and around there, but it's either Kelsey or I'm going to default to Kittle. I'm going to try and catch Muth, or I'm going to try and catch Waller and Ingram later. Like, that's the order. Again, because you can only do so many things with so many draft picks. I think Andrews is a very, very good pick there. I'm not saying I would never do that. If he fell to me just a little bit behind ADP, I'd be like, oh, exciting. But in the generic, I'd probably take the wide receivers expecting to get better quarter tight end elsewhere.
Yeah, and
you're a bigger Andrew. Somehow you're a bigger Andrews guy than me, despite the fact that his ADP is like in my range, and like he was a receiving tight end. I really feel like I'm not doing Andrews my catchphrases justice, but I always come out like a little bit. I want to, but I'm not getting it.
He was my tight end 1 in that class coming out.
Yeah.
And I took heavy flack for that, and then I took heavy flack again the next year for buying into him, because he didn't really break out as a rookie. But you're just looking at him like, man, he was the profile I liked, and it feels like Algie Crumpler, man. There's nobody else in that. Like the receivers don't scare me. He seems like he'll be the number 1 target, and he was, and so I don't know. Yeah, I'm in on Andrews. But I do think, Peter, you're right. If you're talking about straight up, like, who do you want? It's Andrews. But if you're talking about in that late second, all of a sudden, if you can get Waller in the 4th or the 5th, or Kittle in the 4th or the 5th, like, I'd rather do that. I did that in the Scott Fish Bowl, where I had the 101 and ended up getting Kittle at the 3-4 turn. So like Kittle in the 4th, which like I'm happier with Kittle in the 4th because that allowed me to get Derrick Henry and Amon-Ra St. Brown on that roster too. So
yeah, I think that's where my example came from. I think I also snatched Kittle around there, and I was like, that's what's in my head for redraft. Like, if I can do that, why would I not do that?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, Andrews went at the end of the 1st. Dang. And the Scott Fishbowl heavily prioritizes tight ends, so that makes all the big tight ends. Yeah, I got Kittle early 4th, so yeah, that's why I've got that in my head.
Hey, I got to be right back. I will be scant moments.
No problem. I can leave his little symbol there. That looks better than a blank box. Judy early 5th, a hammer pick. Not for me. I think it makes sense. I want exposure to Russell Wilson for that gamble. Like his ADP is the one that slipped. Judy has remained like this quote unquote sleeper pick. And so I don't think you're getting the danger discount there. I'm tired of Judy being excellent except for fantasy. Like that bores me eventually. Or frustrates me maybe. I think it's fine. It's not a hammer pick for me. I normally go another way, but I think it's a very good pick. I'm so damn low on Flowers. I want to be extreme on Flowers, but honestly, I've heard, who was it? It was Travis talking about, and he's someone whose evaluation I take very seriously. Don't tell him I'm not meant to like him. And that just slows me up. Like, again, to Zach's point, when I have opinions I value, I will stop being so extreme, but I would really like to be extremely against Flowers, but I'm not. I don't like the profile at all. Awesome. It's good to know. Any under the radar QBs you like for redraft? Late round QB. Sam Howell. Does he qualify? I think that's a pretty decent pick. Bailey Zappi, I already mentioned, except for the fact apparently he's going to get out secret QB'd by someone else. Colt McCoy. Randomly, especially on teams where I have Murray, but I still think I'm competitive. I've just been picking him up. But no, it's just the usual crew right now for quarterback. So you've got Jared Goff. Stafford's falling too late. And I would prefer that crew over the Love Pickett. Who's the other guy? Love Pickett and Ritter tier of quarterback. So you've got Stafford, Tannehill, Goff maybe. And then, like I said, Sam Howell. I prefer that list. Bateman equals Mona Lisa. It was a really good write-up. You should actually check out when Zach reads out his write-ups. They're really well written. Samson, mental typo will be thrown in my daily vocabulary from here on. You've probably seen my Twitter. You know I can't give anyone shade for that type of thing.
Oh,
Bob Gilchrist.
Got donuts?
I didn't get donuts. So in a perfect world, who would you take over Andrews there? That's good question. I don't have a lot of redraft ADP to pull up.
I mean, if we're in the second, like St. Brown might be there. Like who do we have available? Like that's.
Hang on, I do have Fantasy Pros redraft in here because I do that as part of my. Hang on, I'll try and sort it by Fantasy Pros.
I mean, like Chubb, Derrick Henry, St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb. Like there are in a redraft, there are a few players in that area that I would probably snag.
Well, according to Fantasy Pros, Mark Andrews goes around pick 31, so that's a little later than you guys were saying, but it's right around Devontae Smith, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, Najee Harris, Breece Hall. I'd lean that way. And if we go a little higher, if he's going in the early second for you guys, let's see. It's around pick 24, right? Garrett Wilson, Justin Herbert. This is super flex. Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, Jalen Waddle. Yeah, I'm Ross St. Brown. I'll take all those guys. No premium. Never. I'm going to look over there myself. Appreciate the content. And as always, good night, guys. Appreciate you, Samson. Thanks for staying up with us. Brian, or just Brain? I don't know. It's late. I asked Peter this last week, Zach. But Zach was gone. Sorry. I asked Peter last week, but Zach was gone, so now I'm here for the real answer. Got it. I'd love to hear from the board beauty. That's a phrase. What was your favorite pick you made in the Scott Fishbowl draft? Your best value, as it were.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I didn't have a direct answer either.
So I think that probably I'm on Ross St. Brown at the beginning of the fourth. I really like that value. But I also got Kyler Murray in I think it was like the 10th or 11th, and that could potentially be what does it. But Tyler Higbee, I got really late. and I think Tyler Higbee may be a top 12 tight end. And in the Scott Fish Bowl format, I think that ended up being a really nice pick. And the only other, I mean, I know I've just kind of listed off a bunch of players, but the only other one that I was really excited about was at the 12:01 with Michael Thomas.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
And again, it doesn't sound great. It doesn't sound sexy because Michael Thomas is a 30-year-old wide receiver coming off 2 straight years of turf toe. But if he's healthy, you're not going to get a better player in the 12th round, and especially tied to Derek Carr, the way Derek Carr does pre-snap reads and understands that that Michael Thomas is going to be open. So I have a few picks that I liked. So that was a really good question. Brain burst like that was nice. The bald beauty. I appreciate that.
I think I came up with Quentin Johnson in the 11th round. I felt like that was pretty good. Just for the upside. I got Devin A-Chain, by the way, when you got Michael Thomas. Like, not really the equal upside there. And Scribbles. 424 first and Olave or Kincaid and Hurts in a superflex. This best be in a superflex. I think it Hurts.
Yeah.
Pretty tight, though. I think it's Hurts.
No, I think it's Hurts. Hurts and Olave. Like,
no, sorry.
Oh, no, first and Olave. Oh, first and Olave or Kincaid and ooh.
And Kincaid doesn't really factor here. He's a single first and a late first, and we don't like him as a first. So this is Hurts straight up.
If any of those firsts are looking like they're like top end, like top 4 or 5, then I probably want the picks on Olave. That's tough.
I think it's Hurts, but yeah, Zach's right. It's to the point where you're squinting at the picks themselves, seeing if you can get out of it. Yeah. Typically don't send 4 firsts in a trade. I'm just saying. Genji, oh man, that's fat. I'm taking the picks and Olave. Guess I'm outvoted. Boobs or butts? I think people have both. Local liability. Thoughts on Kareem Hunt based on rumored spots? I tell you what, Kareem Hunt's been one of those weird things I've been avoiding talking about in my weekly series article because we all have him ranked as one of those death running backs. And because he doesn't have a home, he's obviously barely drafted. And so he's been looking at like this extreme value all season. And yeah, he's just, if he lands a home, I don't think it's a particularly great year for those wandering vets. But I mean, it's fine. I don't pay much attention to the rumors until there's until he's on a roster. But I won't change much on him when it does either. Which running backs do you believe are most likely to usurp the running back above them on the depth chart? Okay, so what do they call that? Uncertain backfield situation or whatever. And be a valuable asset to fantasy. Does it have to be both? Does it have to be usurp and be valuable? Because if not, I'd say tank. But if it's about usurping, I'd say, Roschon Johnson. I'm just going to steal Zach's answer. That's probably the best bet to usurp the QB, the running back 1 spot.
Yep, I think those two are. I mean, really, really nice bets. I also and not necessarily usurp, but like I don't think he's going to take over, but
he's not going to usurp is the thing.
Yeah. And the same thing with like Gus Edwards. Like, I don't think Gus Edwards comes in and takes over the backfield, but man, could he be really, really good if something were to happen to J.K. Dobbins? Because as much as Jake Anderson, your former co-host, doesn't want to hear this, Gus Edwards has actually been really good over his career whenever he's played.
Yeah. He also gets some usable weeks. That's the nice thing about Gus. Spock 498. Welcome back. Next move, 12 team Superflex. Start 9, no tight end premium. And is that no PPR as well? Or no PPR tight end premium?
It looks like no PPR. No tight end premium. Standard.
Yeah. Fields, Murray, Young, CMC, JT, Cook. It's got to be Dalvin Cook, which isn't too exciting as your running back 3.
Well, but
Chase
now he's
Waddle,
the Jets
Olave.
guy. Who
I think
knows?
I think trade Olave. If this is a non-premium, Olave ain't what I want. And I want more running backs because it's a standard, and I'm just chasing touchdowns. Or trying to explore the top end of the tight end position with value attached. Those would be the ideas. Where my roster assessment recently recorded in a video, would put me that those are the moves I'm going to go look for first.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious the tight end is the weakness of this team.
Yep. Pick 23. Okay. Single QB. My thoughts on Zach Kuntz, most athletic tight end ever. He's a New York Jet guy, right? I don't think he was particularly good in college. I think he got good stats that last year by literally transferring to a school where just that athleticism paid off. He's a tight end really deep in a rookie draft. I don't mind adding him and see if his value increases, but I don't have a great profile on him. Is there a way to submit our teams to you? Unfortunately, the Rate My League thing is finished. In my Discord, we literally have a section called roster evaluation, and people just post their rosters with questions or comments, and me and everyone else will try and offer thoughts on it. Or right here, man, get here early in the stream, because right now, we wouldn't do our best job. Maybe we're getting a little windy downy. But we're happy to try and give you some brief thoughts here as well. But yeah, those are the only ways right now. We might do more Rate My League podcasts at some point, but it's not scheduled. Scribbles, are you there? I know. I enjoyed hearing from Scribbles, though, so I hope so. Keep the picks. Yeah, 4 picks is really high. Rain Man, spelt rain as in the reign of a king. I like that. Win now. Would you trade Hall for Barkley? Yeah, technically, yeah, because I have Barkley and CMC higher in my ranks. Those are the guys I would prefer. I think same position trades suck as a rule. Having Dalvin Cook doesn't really influence, but yeah, I'd rather have Barkley on a win now team.
I don't think I'd trade Hall because I think Hall is one of the 2 running backs I think continues to hold value going forward.
That's fair.
So I mean, and I know you're saying win now, but like I'd rather add to Hall and get up to Bijan. Maybe the team that drafted Bijan is non-competitive because they are in the 101, and maybe that's the way to do it is to add a little bit to Hall to get to Bijan rather than go to Barkley.
Those are better ideas. Looking to rebuild. I own 6 24 firsts. That's nice. Should I trade Mahomes for Hurts and a 24 first? Yeah, I would think that would be a win for most situations. And again, if you're building, sure. You don't actually just have to continue to add picks. You could look at what else they have. But yeah, I think trading across to Hurts is pretty fair. No need. If they say no, it's fine. I wouldn't push it. And Genji, Breesy the Beast. It's a fair point. He's probably in that category. I worry he's not going to be himself for 100% of the season. That's the only, and I would genuinely draft Barkley over Hall in a redraft, and so that's where my mind went. Appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. Can you talk strategy where there's a toilet bowl playoff constellation? This helps prevent tanking. But I don't like it, but it is what it is. 12 teams, Superflex, start 9, no tight end premium. That's the same thing. Yeah, I mean, play what you play, and if that's what your league likes, I think it's fine.
So we have a similar thing, but it's not for a pick.
Yeah.
It's for buying pizza for our draft because it's a home league and we have a live draft. And so if you lose the toilet bowl, you end up buying the pizza. So it doesn't affect draft picks. But like to me, look, if tanking is not I know it gets a bad rap and it's a bad thing, but like if you do it with your roster as opposed to your lineup, then I think that tanking is a perfectly valid strategy. If you're doing it with your lineup rather than your roster, I think that you're affecting the game, kind of the integrity of the league. So, and I think the same is true in professional sports, where like if you're tanking, if you're a GM and you don't give the coach the players that he needs to win, that's a perfectly legitimate tank. If you're giving the coach the players to win and he's benching them, now we have an issue. You know, it's competitive balance and it's integrity of the league and that sort of thing. So, like, but as far as strategy with something like that, win. Don't worry about being in the toilet bowl. Win.
I wouldn't have say, yeah, just because tanking isn't available just doesn't mean I wouldn't be looking at certain trades.
Yeah.
It does mean that that trade avenue isn't available, but like I'm still interested in Kyler Murray on a building team. I just don't get the added slight edge of him not scoring points, helping my draft pick. And yeah, I mean, it does what it does. It gives you more impetus to try and start a starting lineup every week and try and finish in the middle. But it wouldn't change any of my ideas drastically, I don't think. So I don't have much strategy to alter. 1 of 2, 12 teams to flex, half-point PPR, tight end premium start, 10. Give Russ and Christian Watson, get DJ Moore and J.K. Dobbins. In a super flex, I'd rather keep Russ and Watson.
Yeah.
2 of 2. This is a roster. What's the question? Oh, this is a roster that is on. Yeah, that
Just
doesn't
the second part of that.
Yeah, it's fine. Brees giving me Adrian Peterson vibes. I'm just saying. You can just say as much as you want.
All the way
back. I don't respect.
Well, and he came out in an article that came out today or yesterday and said that structurally everything's good. But this is, you know, I've been kind of saying this is just because everything's structurally good doesn't mean that he feels comfortable with it yet and that he feels comfortable making all of those cuts. And when he does feel comfortable, then he'll be back and life will be good. But he's got to get to a point where he can overcome that mental hurdle. But he's
No, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to tell Scribbles I think that's a very fair decision. And keep the picks, keep Olave. I think it's fine. That's a lot of picks. Gavin Ferguson, any idea on how to use depth to get studs? Tearing up, you mean, essentially? I got 424 seconds to use as well, plus my 25 and 26 picks. Yeah, you just use them to add to good players, not just anything. No, don't send 4 second-round picks for a great player. No. And what you take is DJ Moore in a second, and you try and tear up to wherever you think is a tear up. Like, why did I choose DJ Moore? Jalen Waddle, Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, DK Metcalf, whoever you think's in that window where they might be more open to that kind of trade. That's kind of how I would try and use my depth or having an extra bunch of seconds to try and move up. Or you try and add seconds to a first to get another first later on. Isn't that one of the things that you say, Zach?
Yep.
Where you try to acquire seconds as and when you need. Otherwise, you're just trying to move back into other firsts later on. Yep. Spock, 498. Car plus 24 first, mid to late for Bryce Young. Okay. 12 team super flex start 9. 4 QB points per touchdown. QB's a Field, Murray, Bryce Young. Did I mess that up if trying to compete? Yeah, I'd probably still rather have Young in a Dynasty league if I'm trying to compete. You got Murray there, though. I think it's fine. I don't have a lot of expectations for Carr as a thing. Like, I think you just got...
No, I think I'd rather have Young. Yeah, I'd rather have Young than that, but it's...
Like, if you were going up a bit, maybe. Yeah. I don't think he messed it up. It's not terrible, don't get me wrong. But, yeah, it doesn't get my Dynasty juices flowing. D Magoon, hi guys, 10 team Superflex PPR start 10. I'm contending was offered CMC and a 24 first for Anthony Richardson. I would trade Anthony Richardson for that, yeah. In that situation. Yeah. Should I deal or wait to see? I mean, you can do either. It's very fair. But again, if your mindset is on this team's competitive, then yeah, I would just do the deal. Bryce, do you think Zeke can regress with a pass catching role? Before last year from 1921, he was averaging over 70 targets a year. No, I think we're in the twilight of Zeke's career. I think he can establish a workload on a team. I think we've seen the height of his career, though. I don't expect to see the best years yet for him. Dalvin Cook plus a 24 late first for Gibbs. That's just a first to Gibbs in my head. I know Cook does carry value, but that's just tearing up to me. That's adding a first to something that's worth a second and getting Gibbs, and I like that move. Yeah. Favorite late round dart throw for a superflex startup superflex. Startup in a rookie draft or a startup? It must be startup draft.
Startup is
a. What am I talking about? All right. Late round dart throw. We're talking late. I'm assuming not theoretically late, where we get to name Marcus Brown as a late round dart throw. So outside round 17. Let's see.
I mean, Michael Wilson is an interesting one.
Yeah.
You just mentioned Hollywood Brown, but like Wilson could potentially be the two there and jump in. Genji says Marvin Mims, and that's a really good one. I'm not sure he's a sleeper, but man, he's a really good player.
Like outside round 20, I went deep. Bailey Zappi, Evan Hull, Justin Ross are my 3S. I'm higher on them than consensus.
How do you feel about Jaylen Warren? Like, I've heard a lot of smart people touting Jaylen Warren lately.
Isn't that about it's going to be a committee? He's going to suck up work.
He's going to be a pass catcher. Yeah, I mean,
yeah. I don't go in for it too much, but I think he's definitely in that category of running backs who are rosterable and might provide some value even when the running back one is still around. I think that's fair. I'm not particular on that train. I'd rather have Najee Harris, obviously.
Yep.
Jalen Waddle's, it's fine though. He's going in the 15th round. He's one of those dart throws. I would roster him. Yeah. Non-PPR is just it's standard scoring leagues.
Again, it's different.
Play what you enjoy, and from my perspective, in terms of strategy, in terms of things I adjust, it's just about catching touchdowns, man. And they're hard to do, and it's high variance, and that's fine. It's a lot of fun too. But yeah, it just prioritizes those that top tier of players that have more volume. What round? Yeah. Marvin Mims is a fairly good name, actually. Rashi Rice as well. Spot 498 contender 12 team superflex start 10 PPR non-tight end premium. I don't know why I read it that way. And this is a roster, all draft capital. Oh, what was the question here? Oh, are you a contender? I see the question mark. All right. Lawrence Watson Murray. CMC, Bajon Robinson, Austin. Yes, you're a contender. Yeah, I'm a Ross St. Brown, Higgins, London. I would say you are a top 5 team in most leagues. Pretty easily. Yeah, it's your tight end position again, though, right? Oh, no, that's Andrews. So, no, you're set. Yeah, you're a very competitive team in most leagues, I would say. We're getting towards the end here, Zach. My new favorite sleepers are Ronnie Bell and Trey Palmer. Why not, man? I heard a yes.
Is that it? Are we there?
Pretty much. I think we're out of comments, questions.
All right.
So yeah.
All right. Look over there.